Hello everyone and welcome to Game 3 of the 1972 match of the century between Boris Vasilyevich Spassky and Robert James Fischer. Now I know what you're thinking, dude, you can't just show us Game 3 without showing us Game 2. Well, the reason I'm not going to be showing Game 2 is because Game 2 of this match never actually happened. Now, you've seen Game 1. After Game 1, on the evening of the second game when it should have happened, Fischer basically gave an ultimatum to the chief arbiter of the match, German Grandmaster Lothar Schmidt. He said either the cameras go or I go. Saying that he will only play if they turn down all the cameras, which was basically unthinkable. Mr. Chester Fox and his company, they bought all the television rights for this match, and they invested a lot in organizing this, some $60,000. They thought they will be able to get returns, after the match is over via television rights. And this seemed very. Fischer basically argued for a couple of months during the negotiations for the match that both him and Spassky should get some 30%, not only from the gate money but also from television rights. So it seemed, why would you do this? Why would you not only deprive yourself of this money, this 30% of television rights, but also there's like this huge prize fund. If you go, if you don't play the match, you're not gonna get any money, you're gonna ruin your reputation, and you're basically not gonna get anything. So it was very interesting, but still Fischer did not back down from his request. And it was the game 2 already started. As Fischer had the white pieces, he had to make the first move. Spassky started the clock, and 35 minutes have already elapsed on Fischer's clock. Now the rules go, if 1 hour passes by and Fischer doesn't show up, he immediately forfeits the game. So Mr. Chester Fox, who had the rights, all the television rights for this match, actually backed down at this moment. He said, okay, I'll remove all the cameras, just, invite Fischer, I want him to play, and then perhaps for Game 3 we're gonna think of an arrangement, how we can also both use the cameras and that the match continues. And Fischer said, okay, I agree, but I also want my 35 minutes back. But this, unfortunately, was not possible. There was no rule that stipulated that turning clock time on the clock back was possible. So the chief arbiter Lothar Schmidt couldn't do anything about this. Fischer didn't show up. The 1 hour elapsed, and Fischer lost game 2. So now it was pretty much over. It's Spassky is already 2-0 in the lead, and Fischer blew his chances. He should have had the white pieces in this game. So probably no one in the world, not even Spassky, nor the Russian Federation, nor the chief arbiter, anyone didn't think that the match would actually continue and that Fischer would agree to play under these terms. Spassky, I think he went on a fishing expedition. He also went on a fishing expedition to catch salmon during the whole negotiations when Fischer was in New York and not coming to Reykjavik. And it's not like a joke or anything or a wordplay. He actually did go on a fishing expedition. No one thought that Fischer would come back. There was even news from some of the reporters that Robert Fischer booked a flight from Reykjavik to Iceland, but it was actually some German tourist also named Robert Fischer. It was really tense, and it really did seem like the match of the century would go to waste. But then, before the third game started, Fischer's lawyer, Paul Marshall, and his second, William Lombardi, they made a phone call to the chief arbiter, Lothar Schmidt, and they asked him if it was possible for Game 3 to be played in the back room that was behind the main stage. Although unlikely, Lothar Schmidt called Spassky and he asked him, does he agree to these terms? And this was actually the weirdest moment of all. Here, Spassky immediately agreed. He said, "Yes, I will play him in the backstage." And this was a moment where Spassky could have single-handedly have won the match. If it was, if you asked the Russian Federation or pretty much anyone, Spassky should have said no, and the match would have gone to him. Now, I don't know if it would be like the championship would be over, or would there be a second match in Moscow between Spassky and Petrosian? Probably there would be one, but to the Russian Chess Federation, it wouldn't really matter because the title of the World Chess Champion would stay in Russia or the Soviet Union. But to everyone's surprise, Spassky agreed to these terms. So it's game 3, but soon Spassky would very soon regret this, and a lot of people said that this was a huge mistake on Spassky's part, playing into Fischer's psychological warfare. Although I personally don't think it was a means of psychological warfare on Fischer's part, that Fischer just really, the cameras really did affect him in a negative way. But, it's hard to prove anything now. But okay, the game 3 is supposed to start. Spassky makes his first move. On the third game, Spassky plays d4. And to Spassky's surprise, Fischer is nowhere to be found. So it's game 3. They agreed on all of Fischer's terms. They moved the cameras. Fischer did come here. And it took I believe some 15 minutes for Fischer to arrive. Fischer did arrive, but he didn't make his move just immediately. Rather, he kept complaining to the chief arbiter Lothar Schmidt, and he was complaining about cameras making a sound. So now they had to turn all of the cameras, even those Fischer couldn't see, but he could actually hear them. So they had one closed circuit camera. That one made no sound, and that was the only camera that was allowed to record them. So it wasn't really a great spectacle for the audience. They had just that soundless scene and basically a soundless replica of the board. So after all that settled down, Fischer finally makes his first move some 5 minutes after he's done complaining, and he responds knight to f6. Okay, we have c4, e6, knight to f3. Everything is the same as in game 1. But here, unlike game 1, Fischer doesn't go for the queen's gambit decline with d5, rather he goes with c5. So, inviting Spassky, rather challenging Spassky to a Benoni. And here, after all of this, we can call it psychological warfare, Spassky actually accepts the challenge. He plays d5 and goes straight into Fischer's famous Benoni, which, if you remember the Palma de Mallorca interzonal tournament, Fischer played a brilliant game in the Benoni with the black pieces against Wolfgang Ullmann. But okay, e captures on d5, c captures d6, we have knight to c3, g6, and here this is a pretty standard position of the Benoni, where moves like e4 have been played, h3, you can develop the dark square bishop, but here Spassky actually goes knight to d2. With this move, he goes into a different variation. And okay, this is nothing out of the ordinary. Knight b to d7 by Fischer, and now you could go something like knight to c4 to stop black's development of the bishop as you're attacking this, but then knight to b6 is perfectly fine. The queen now defends the pawn, also you're offering a trade of knights, and you get a semi-open file for your rook. So here Spassky goes e4. And okay, bishop to g7. Bishop to e2, we have castles, rook to e8, and this is a well-known line. Everyone, if you've played the Benoni, you've encountered this line, where Gligorich in his book says that a very often response here would be a4, but here Spassky actually has a home preparation ready. He plays queen to c2. And with this move, Gligorich in his book, he says that, okay, it does save white a tempo when you look at the other variations, but on the other hand, the queen now leaves the king side, and when the queen is on d1, the queen-bishop battery really keeps an eye on this g4 square. But now that the queen is on c2, the queen might not be so useful on the king side. And this really how Fischer takes advantage of this slight imperfection in the position. Although, I mean, if you ask an engine, it's not even an imperfection. But if you remember... remember, I made a video on Tal's game against Gergenitze. Tal had the black pieces, and he also played the Benoni. and at one point queen to c2 was played by Gergenitze, and Tal saw that by playing queen to c2, white left his rook that was on e1, okay, undefended, and then really unleashed a powerful attack. Here, Fischer uses a similar idea, and he plays knight to h5. A very nice idea, because now, as there's no queen on d1, you can't just capture on h5 and then gobble up the pawn as well. So here Fischer is offering a knight, and also he's offering to mess up his pawn structure. But what else is there? I mean, aside from capturing the knight. If you don't capture the knight, what do you play? If you go something like knight to f3, because you do have to develop your pieces, make room for the bishop and everything, then Fischer simply continues knight to e5, and all is well here. Now, the light square bishop can also come into play. f5 will be an idea. Black is excellent here. So, I mean, it's offered, you have to take it. Spassky captures it, bishop captures on h5, we have g captures on h5. And then now knight to c4, pressuring the d6 pawn. And okay, knight to e5 by Fischer. This is, Fischer simply keeps developing. We have knight back to e3, as Spassky does want to keep an eye on this f5 square. And then now comes queen to h4. A very nice idea by Fischer. Already this is move 14, and already there are very unpleasant threats on the king side. And here Spassky assesses the position correctly. He simply continues developing bishop to d2. But to play a move like bishop to d2, you have to like thoroughly analyze that knight to f3 isn't a death trap. Because here knight to f3, it seems very powerful. For example, pawn captures, and now bishop to e5. Already you're threatening checkmate. And okay, rook f to e1, you can make some room for the king, but let's say bishop to h3, queen to h3 is coming, now threatening bishop captures on h2. Then f4, you block simply, bishop captures, and now knight to f1. The knight now guards the h2 pawn, and also you open up a discovered attack against black's bishop. Queen g4 check, now comes knight to g3, and now you have to see that after bishop captures, queen captures, and h4, if black wins a piece back and also started a very nice attack, then black will definitely be better. But here queen to h6 is simply too powerful a move. H captures on g3, and now comes rook to e3, and now you see that there is no defense against rook to g3, either winning the queen or checkmating the black king. For example, even if you capture this, g captures on h2, simply king captures. Again, you will either face a rook to g3 and you lose the queen. Queen h3 isn't possible, a rook is covering that as well. If you move the queen, then rook to g3 will simply lead to checkmate. So bishop to d2, a very nice move by Spassky, and very precise calculation that knight to f3 doesn't work just yet. Knight to g4. Fischer simply wants to, simply a positional idea, wants to improve his pawn structure. He is threatening checkmate on h2, of course. You do have to prevent this. Knight captures on g4 was played, h captures on g4. Now the pawn structure on the king side is again very nice. And here bishop to f4. Spassky had to play this. You do have to bring the bishop over here and keep an eye on this very strong diagonal. Also, you have to keep an eye on the e5 square. And here, if Fischer insists on this bishop to e5 move, you can simply capture it. Rook captures, you're threatening rook to h5, but it doesn't matter. Even f4, rook to h5, you can simply go g3. The queen now is definitely useful on c2 as she guards the h2 pawn. So doesn't really work. So here Fischer finds a different idea. Queen to f6. Remaneuvering the queen by attacking the bishop, and now if you move the bishop back, you get h5, and then h4 is coming. So instead, after queen to f6, Spassky plays g3. Okay, bishop to d7. Fischer has to also keep developing his pieces. We have a4, and now comes b6. Now Fischer will try to prove that his majority on the queen side is much more important than Spassky's majority on the king side, which is often the case. If you have more pawns than your opponent on the side of the board where there are no kings, then that is definitely considered an advantage. Rook f to e1. We have a6, and here Fischer is preparing b5. Now he's starting to push on the queen side. Rook to e2. Spassky doesn't really find any counterplay, and he wants to double rooks on the e file, and at some point hope to execute e5. Fischer pushes b5 and now immediately rook to e1. If you capture first, for example, pawn captures, then you get pawn captures. And after rook to e1, b4 is coming. Now, you don't really have the option of moving the knight. You have to go with your plan. e5, pawn captures, and now knight to e4. You attack the queen. Queen to g4, now kind of pinning the knight here, and after bishop to e3 as it is attacked, yes, white did get a passed pawn, but it's not very likely that it will ever break through, and white doesn't really have compensation for the pawn. So after b5, we have rook a to e1 immediately by Spassky. And okay, queen to g6. Spassky's idea was to push e5, so why not simply prevent it? Queen to g6. If you push, then you're going to lose a pawn, because after queen captures, rook has to recapture. There are not enough defenders on the e5 square. b3. Rook to e7 by Fischer. We have queen to d3, and then now comes rook to b8. A captures on b5, a captures on b5, and now white doesn't really have a good move here. You still can't push e5, you can't play a waiting move, because if you play any waiting move, then b4 is coming and black wins the game. You move the knight, bishop to b5, wins the exchange, and black is up material in a better position, enough to win the game. So Spassky has to push b for himself. Now we have c4. Now Fischer gets a nice passed c pawn. Queen to d2, and now comes rook b to e8, piling up on that e pawn. Rook to e3. Really, there's nothing better. Bishop to g5 is impossible. You can't harass this rook because of bishop captures on c3. Queen captures, and you just lose a piece here. So, rook to e3 by Spassky. Now comes h5. Fischer prepares to push the pawn. We have rook 3 to e2. Spassky doesn't have a better option. He just has to wait and see what Fischer will do. And here Fischer kind of tests the patience of the world champion. King to h7. Rook back to e3, and Fischer repeats. King to g8 just once. Rook 3 to e2, and now as Fischer can't find a way to successfully break through in any way, so he decides to at least grab a pawn, and perhaps this will give him enough advantage. Bishop captures on c3. Queen captures, and now rook captures on e4. Rook captures, and rook captures. It might seem a bit odd to exchange this rook as well and improve the position of black's queen, but ideas like rook to a1 followed by rook to a8 are easily met with rook to e8, and again, white's position isn't any better. After rook to e4, Spassky captured the rook, rook captures, queen captures, and now comes bishop to h6. Threatening checkmate on g7. It's not better to capture on d6. You simply get queen captures on d5, you attack the bishop, and after queen f6 defending, you get queen to d1 check. King moves and bishop to c6, and it's all over. You're getting checkmated, whatever you play. So after queen e4, bishop to h6, Spassky threatens checkmate on g7. We have queen to g6 now, simply preventing checkmate. And white now has to play something. There's really not all that much to do. Your bishop is under attack, bishop to c1, and now comes queen to b1, pinning the bishop. We have king to f1. Spassky wants to get out of his cage, because you can't really stop. Bishop to f5 is coming, to d3, or perhaps to e4 to f3. Not a lot you can do. And it's often the case when there are bishops of opposite colors. Here, Fischer has a light square bishop, Spassky has a dark square bishop. And it will very often be the case, if you're the side that's attacking, it will feel like the other side is down a piece, because the dark square bishop cannot oppose a light square bishop. So okay, king to f1, Spassky tries to bring his king out of the cage, bishop to f5, as we've already said, king to e2, and now comes queen to e4 check, the strongest move by Bobby. If you try bishop to e4 with the idea of bishop to f3, then you get bishop to b2, again, checkmate is threatened, and after bishop to f3 check, king d2, now you don't really have an option here, you have to prevent checkmate by f6, and then queen to c2, you have to play something, you have to exchange queens here, and then you will really have to work hard to prove that you can actually win this game in an opposite color bishop's endgame. So after king e2, queen e4 check. Now Fischer is forcing Spassky to move his queen out of this very strong diagonal. Spassky plays queen to e3. If you tried moving your king, it doesn't really work. King to f1 runs into queen h1 check. King moves, now comes bishop d3 check, king moves, and now queen to f3. Threatening queen to e2, so whatever you play, you can threaten checkmate, but again, you grab a pawn, king moves, check, king moves, now you check, king moves, and now f6, and white has no moves. Literally no moves. You can't capture because of mate on c2, and whatever you do, you are simply down too much material, and the black can win this game any way he likes. So, like we said, you have to move the queen out of this strong diagonal. Queen e3, we have queen to c2 with check, queen to d2, and queen to b3 now. Here Fischer prepares to push his c3 pawn. This is move 40, and you have to do something. And here Gligoric mentions, like, the same way Fischer made a very incorrect move that completely lost him the game in game 1. Well, he probably would have lost anyway, but at least there would be some chances for him to save the game. Queen to d4 was played, and now it's all over. Here it was time to adjourn the game, and Fischer sealed his move, and of course both Fischer and Spassky analyzed this through the entire night, but Spassky, as both of them were very low on time, Spassky couldn't really know which move Fischer sealed. So it was only the next day, after they continued the adjourned game, that the chief arbiter Lothar Schmidt informed Spassky that Fischer actually played bishop to d3 check, and Fischer didn't even arrive to the game yet because he was late, but Spassky resigned even before Fischer came to the board. So it was a very, I mean, it was very sad. It was the first time Fischer ever defeated Spassky. So they played 5 times before the World Chess Championship. Then he lost game 6 they ever played in round 1. Now it's game 3, and this is the first time ever Fischer has beaten Spassky. And Fischer didn't even arrive at the board, so Spassky can congratulate him personally. And none of the Fischer didn't even hear the applause from the crowd because he simply wasn't there. But yeah. He resigned because after this check, there's really nothing to do. After king to e1, you get queen captures on b4 check, you grab another pawn, and now whatever you do, black can simply start pushing his passed pawns, and it's all over. Nothing to do here. And on the other hand, if you go something like king to e3, still queen d1, you threaten checkmate. Whatever white does, if white threatens checkmate, you're just gonna bring the king back, and it will be either king c1 or king c3 will be met with queen to c2 checkmate. So yeah, after this bishop to d3, the unsealed move, Spassky resigned the game, and like we said, the first ever victory by Fischer over Spassky, and definitely this has taken a toll on Spassky's psyche, as he could have ended the match with a single word. He could have just said no when Lothar Schmidt called him and said, no, I will not play under these ridiculous terms. I'm a world champion. I deserve to play on the main stage with lots of light and lots of cameras and the audience, enjoying my presence, which is pretty much something that anyone would do. But that's why Spassky is such a gentleman. He allowed to play under such terms because he is simply a chess player who wants to promote chess, and he wants to fight Fischer under any circumstances, and under any terms. So that's what kind of a guy Boris Spassky is. He's just the biggest chess gentleman you will ever see. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I really do hope you're enjoying the Bobby Fischer series so far. Sorry about no video yesterday. I have a couple of private matters I have to attend to, but I will try to make as much content as possible, as I really do enjoy it, and I really hope you enjoy it as well. I would also like to thank Ori Schofman, Hamza Azam, Robert Sullivan, Richard Farrer, and Baruch Brodersen for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with, most likely with game 4 of this Fischer-Spassky match, but perhaps there will be a nice game in the Batumi Chess Olympiad, so perhaps even a game from there. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon. Hello everyone and welcome to the long-awaited round 1 of the 2019 Grenke Chess Classic. If you remember, last year's winner of the Grenke Chess Open was Vincent Keimer, and he won the Grenke Open tournament with 8 points out of 9. I don't know if you remember, if you were subscribed to the channel back then, but in the last round he defeated Richard Rapport. It was really an amazing game, and his teacher Peter Leko said that even Magnus Carlsen would be most likely satisfied with 8 out of 9 in the open section. And by winning the open section, he qualified for this year's Grenke Chess Classic. This is the master event, 10 players, a single round robin featuring players like Magnus Carlsen, Peter Svidler, Vishwanathan Anand is playing Arkady Naidic, and a lot of strong players, and the 14-year-old German superstar, as I called him in my last year's video, the German Bobby Fischer, Vincent Keimer. So it's really an amazing game. It lasted some 7.5 hours. I'm really exhausted just by watching it, and I can't even imagine how the players feel after playing such a exhausting game. And we also do have a surprise, but we're gonna get that after a few moves in the beginning. The tournament lasts from 22nd to 29th of April, and well, it's just a crazy game. Let's dive straight into it, as I'm really tired just from watching it. And it's interesting, Vincent Keimer is twice as young as Carlsen, so Vincent is 14, Carlsen is 28. Not very often that Carlsen will face such an opponent. But okay, Vincent opens with d4. Carlsen replies with knight to f6, we have c4, and Carlsen goes for the Benoni. There was a lot of talk about what opening will Carlsen use, as well, he faces an opponent who is twice as young as him, and some I don't know, even maybe 300 rating points lower rated than him. So you kind of have to win, because if you draw, you lose rating points, and there's a lot of pressure. So d5, advancing the pawn, going into the main line of the Benoni. G6, we have knight to c3, d6, and e4 now. Bishop to g7, all pretty standard, knight to f3, and castles by Carlsen. Bishop to e2, and now e5. Closing up the position, not going for e6, so this is, I believe, a check Benoni. We have castles by Keimer, and now knight to e8 by Carlsen, announcing that he's ready to push f5 at some point. We have knight to e1 by Vincent, also preparing f4. We have f5, pawn captures on f5, g captures on f5, and now Vincent goes for f4. And here there are a lot of ideas. This position already happened. It happened in 1968 in a game between Hans-Günther Kessler and Tigran Petrosyan, where Petrosyan, after this f4 move, continued with knight to d7. And Carlsen also goes for this move, so he follows Petrosyan's game, and in that game, bishop to e3 was the move. But here Vincent goes for knight to d3, and it is of this moment from move 12 that we have a completely new game on our hands. And since it's only a new game from now, I would like to take this opportunity to show you a few nice photos and a few nice high quality videos from this event. So here we have a very nice photo of, there you see Magnus Carlsen on the right, Vincent on the left, and Arkady Dvorkovich, the FIDE president, making the first move for Vincent. You can see that Carlsen is already focused on the game, and Vincent gives Carlsen the deadly stare. And also we have this very nice photo. No, not a photo, this is a video. The good people of the Grenke Chess Classic video team sent me these few videos for us to enjoy, so let us dive straight into it. So here we have, see, the high quality footage is just amazing. There you have it. Vincent thinking about the position, Carlsen blurry in the front. Let's just enjoy it for a few seconds. Also we have this one, also a nice close-up of Vincent. Pretty stressful probably for a 14-year-old boy to be put to such a spotlight, but as you'll see, he fared very well. Also here we have a very nice photo of Carlsen. There you see a blurry Caruana in the background. Also thinking what to do about the position, even though we haven't reached this position already, but I'm sure you won't mind, as you won't be able to transfer it into the 2D board that we are using. And here the last one, from this perspective, there you see a wild Caruana appears in the background. Vincent makes his move, And well, it's just amazing footage. So I'm very thankful to the Granky Chess Classic video team for sending us these. They're just amazing. But getting back to the game, 93, it's a new game from this position, and it invites Carlsen to push e4. Carlsen is no stranger to grabbing more space in the center, so he does it. We have e4, forcing the knight back. We have knight to f2, and now Carlsen goes for bishop captures on c3. It's not a new idea. It seems like a very weird idea, giving up your dragon for a knight here, but Carlsen just closed the center. And as you'll see in the position very quickly, his knight pair will be a lot more maneuverable than Vincent's bishop pair. So a6 is another possibility, just taking away the b5 square for the knight, maybe preparing b5 at some point, but Carlsen goes for this forcing line. Bishop captures on c3, b captures, and now knight d to f6, remaneuvering the knights over to the queen side, to the king side. Knight g7 is the idea, and the queen will try to create some sort of an attack against the white king via queen to e8 and queen to g6. Bishop to e3 by Vincent, and knight to g7 as planned, and queen to e1. Now guarding the c3 pawn, but also the queen is now ready to also enter the king side. Bishop to d7, and now comes knight to d1. With bishop to a4, and h3 now. And here Carlsen eliminates Vincent's knight. Bishop captures on d1, we have queen captures on d1, and now just queen to e8, preparing to go to g6 to start an attack. And here you can see the center is all closed up, so there are no breakthroughs possible in the center. Only breakthroughs possible in the position are a6 followed by b5, if Carlsen decides to do a breakthrough on the queen side, or if Vincent at some point decides to do g4. And well, it's both ideas are a bit risky, and until the bishop pair becomes active, the knight pair will be stronger. So king to f2. Vincent now makes room for the rook on g1, and he wants to push g4. So he's not afraid of Carlsen. He says, I'm coming for you. Queen to g6 by Carlsen, and now comes rook to g1. And here, king to h8. Already by this point they are at move 21, and Vincent's been spending a lot of time, which is, you know, not strange. He won the last year's super tournament. Well, it's not a super tournament, but it is a very strong, especially since he won it with 8 out of 9, and now he faces the world champion in round 1 of the main event next year. And here he has to decide, does he wants to go for a4, keeping everything stable, maybe trying to create some weaknesses on the queen side, or does he want to immediately go for g4? Now everyone was hoping he immediately goes for g4. It's a very powerful idea, but it's hard to calculate it, because after queen to g4 you get queen h6, and now you don't really do much by pushing g5, because queen h4 check. And now after the king moves, you get knight g to h5. And here if you capture the knight, then comes queen g3 check, king f1, and now queen captures on h3 with check. Not grabbing the bishop, but this check is stronger. King f2, and now queen to h4 check. King to f1, and now knight captures back on f6. And now you have just a very strong position where white is up material, but black is much better here. So after this g4 move and queen h6, you will not be playing g5, you will have to go rook to h1. And then you get this queen h4 check, king g2, and then after knight to d7, you can go queen to e1. Trade queens, and then after rook captures, you can go h6. And here you would have this position with white, where you are a little bit better, but it's hard to decide to play this against Carlsen and to calculate everything so properly that you can go for g4, and that Carlsen, by playing king to h8 and allowing g4, well, he basically says that this is better for black. So here is one of the moments where Vincent believes him, and he goes for a4. And I've seen the live stream. His teacher Peter Leko was actually satisfied more with a4 because it just keeps everything stable, not going into anything crazy. And okay, rook to g8, and here queen to f1 by Vincent. Now, if this knight wasn't here, queen g3 would be checkmate. You can see that the queen and the bishop are not allowing the white king to move anywhere. So you have to be very careful. Carlsen goes knight f to h5, now preparing queen to g3 checkmate, as the knight now covers the g3 square, and here you have to prevent it. So g3 by Vincent, and now rook a to f8. just bring that rook into the game. Queen to g2 now, and now comes queen to f6, attacking the c3 pawn, and Vincent simply defends it. We have rook a to c1. And now you have to again decide what to do. One option is definitely knight captures on g3. A piece sacrifice that follows queen captures, and now knight to h5, opening up an attack against the white queen. And now after you move the queen, queen to h4 check. King to f1, and now rook captures on g1, king captures on g1, rook g8 check, king to f1, and then, well, you have to close up the queen side and try and play this position. It looks scary for white, but black doesn't have anything decisive here. So by going for this, Carlsen would mostly be offering a draw, which Carlsen is not interested in. After this rook a to c1, Carlsen just continues playing. We have queen to d8, now with ideas of maybe going over to a5 and attacking the a4 pawn and the c3 pawn from the queen side. So perhaps the idea is to win the pawns on the queen side. We have queen to h2 by Vincent, and now just knight back to f6. We have g4 now. And here, knight to d7. And it seems now that Carlsen is ready to play queen to a5, followed by knight to b6, and win the pawns on the queen side. And here we have g5. It's interesting that after Vincent pushed g5, he had only 6 minutes on the clock, and he needs 11 more moves to reach time control, while Carlsen had over 40. And here Carlsen does go queen to a5, and this is where things started to take a wrong turn for Vincent. Here you have to go h4, h5, h6, and only then push g6 to break through on the king side. But Vincent immediately went for g6. His idea is that when Carlsen plays h6, which he must, to go queen g3, queen h4, and deliver checkmate. But it's not all that easy. First we have rook to b1, and now rook to b8, defending this pawn, not b6, blocking off the queen's retreat to the d8 square. We have queen to g3 now, preparing queen to h4 and capturing here, but now Carlsen just retreats, queen to d8, and this is the point. Now that Vincent pushed g6 immediately, the queen now has access to the h4 square, and a queen to h4 by white is not possible anymore. So we have king to e1 by Vincent, and now knight to e8 by Carlsen. King to d2, and now knight to f8. Here Carlsen is ready to win this pawn. And we have bishop to f2 here. Bishop to h5 was also possible, taking control of this pawn, but then then knight to f6 attacks the bishop, and well, here white just wins. So this would have been possible for white, but it's Vincent is very low on time, and he didn't find this line. Now, of course, g7 wins the game. So here, after knight to f8, Vincent doesn't find this bishop to h5 idea. He goes for bishop to f2. And here, Carlsen is no rush to capture the pawn. Now he just improves the position. Queen to e7. And now the same idea that we already shown, bishop to h5 doesn't work, because now knight f6 is possible as the queen covers the g7 square. So here, after queen to e7, we have king to e3. Vincent is just waiting to see what Carlsen will do, and now queen to f6. Here, by the time Carlsen played queen to f6, he could have captured the pawn, but there's no rush because Vincent has only 1 minute on the clock, and Carlsen is pressuring him to make a mistake. Vincent goes king to d2, and only now does Carlsen capture. We have knight to g6, and now h4. You have to be careful where you move the knight, otherwise you might get queen captures on g8 checkmate. So knight to e7 by Carlsen, opening up an attack towards Vincent's queen. Queen to h3, and now rook captures on g1. We have rook captures on g1, and now queen to f7. And here, this is move 40, so by playing rook captures on g1, Vincent reached time control, so here he was awarded additional time. So now he is no longer under time pressure, but the game is highly complicated, and it continues. And as you can see, Carlsen is up a pawn, so it's not an easy position. We have h5 by Vincent, and now comes knight back to f6. Bishop to h4, and now b6, just strengthening the queen side, and rook back to b1, preparing to push a5 and to bust open the queen side. And here Carlsen goes queen to f8. Not a lot, pretty much no one understood what queen to f8 was. Peter Leko and Jan Gustafsson agreed that the queen was much more useful on f7. But here, most likely what Carlsen was doing and what they agreed upon was that he was simply trying to get Vincent to waste more time. And this is what Vincent does, as he doesn't really have all that many active moves. He goes rook to g1, Carlsen repeats, queen to f7, we have rook to b1. Rook to g7 by Carlsen, rook to g1 by Vincent, and queen back to f8. And with these few moves, Vincent is again under 20 minutes. So he constantly tries to see what Carlsen is doing, and it seems to be working for Carlsen. King to c2, and now knight f to g8. Remaneuvering the knights, we have king to d2, and now queen to f7. We have king back to c2 by Vincent, and now rook to f8. So now the position changed, and any threefold repetition ideas to get a draw by Vincent will no longer be possible, at least not for the moment. Vincent goes king back to d2, we have queen to e8, now transferring his attention over to the queen side. Rook to a1 defending the pawn, and now rook to f7. We have a5 by Vincent, b captures on a5, rook captures on a5, and now comes knight to c8. Just defending the pawn, also the rook is defending the pawn, and once this knight comes to b6, there will be constant pressure towards the c4 pawn, and it will still be a very difficult position for Vincent to play. He goes rook back to a1, and now queen to f8. We have rook to b1, rook to b1, and by the time this was played, Vincent was again down to 5 minutes on the clock. And here Carlsen just closes the b file with knight to b6, now with constant pressure towards the c4 pawn, and now rook to g1. And here everyone thought that Carlsen blundered, because everyone is following the live stream, watching Sesse's analysis, the Norwegian supercomputer. And here Sesse's line was, I will show it as it is, well, quite pleasing, just a5. And after a move by white, a4, and now after rook to b1, attacking the knight, queen to b8. This is the idea. The queen has to come to a7. And after rook to b5, a3, king to b1, and now queen to a7, guarding both the knight and the pawn on a3. After rook to b3, a2 check, king to a1, and now rook joins the queen side with rook to b7. This was Sesse's plan on how to continue pursuing advantage with black. But Carlsen tried a different idea. Here Carlsen played rook to g7, and he allowed Vincent a lot of activity. And here Vincent immediately strikes. Rook captures on g7, king captures on g7, and now queen to g3 check. King to h8, and now queen to g6. And this is the problem. Now Carlsen can't move the queen or the knight, as they have to keep an eye on the h6 pawn, and also you can't move the knight because of bishop to f6 wins immediately. So Carlsen has to figure out what to do here. We have a5, and now comes bishop to f1. With bishop to f1, Vincent reaches the second time control, and he's awarded additional 15 minutes. So he's again out of danger. Carlsen continues with a4, with king to c2, and now a3. Brilliant idea by Carlsen that allows him to continue the game, pushing for some advantage, even though it's really unbelievable that you can even push for advantage here with the white queen tying all of your options up like this. Here, king to b3, and now do you see the move by black that Carlsen had in mind? Even feel free to pause the video here to see how you protect the a3 pawn. I'll give you a couple of seconds if you're interested in trying to do it. I know it's late and you must be exhausted, but it's a nice idea. For those of you who are able to do it, you are an excellent maneuver of knights, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, knight to a4. This is the idea Carlsen played, because now, of course, capturing is the best thing to do, but there are also other possibilities. Here you could capture and then play everything that follows, but Vincent here isn't interested in that. You could go captures and then knight captures on c3. If you capture the knight, obviously you cannot prevent the pawn from queening. So after captures and captures on c3, you could now go bishop to h3, going for this, but now it's really a draw, pretty much. After queen a8 check, king b2, queen b8 check, allowing king captures on c3, but now queen b4 check. This was Carlsen's idea. King c2, queen captures on c4, king d1, Queen d3 check, king e1, queen e3 check, and now you can't go king f1 because queen captures bishop with check, then you no longer have bishop captures on f5, so here you would have to go back and queen d3 check, it would be a draw. But here an amazing moment happens. Vincent either didn't find this, or he's not interested in a draw. He plays bishop to h3 immediately, and now he wants to go for this mating idea. Carlsen goes queen g7, trades queens, we have queen captures, king captures, and only now bishop captures on f5. But here knight to f6, and here Vincent is again down to his last 5 minutes, and there are no more time controls, there are no more additional time givings, so you have to play the absolute best idea. And it's not all that difficult to make a mistake here. Here it seems like just captures, and captures secures a draw for white, but this would actually be a huge mistake because a2 now wins the game for black. You have to stop the pawn from queening, but then your bishop is very poorly placed on e4, knight captures on c3 check, picks up the bishop, it's all over. So, after knight to f6, Vincent played king captures on a3. It's the only good move for white. And now the game continues. Carlsen goes knight captures on c3, and here you have to go king to b3. After king to b3, knight e2, bishop captures on f6, king captures on f6, and bishop captures on e4, with knight captures on f4, and then bishop to f3 guards the pawn, and this position is now a draw. But with 2 minutes on the clock, Vincent doesn't find king to b3. He plays bishop to f2, preventing Carlsen from pushing the passed pawn, and gives new life to the position. Carlsen goes knight to e2, attacks the f4 pawn, but now first king to a4. King to a4 is not a great move, but it's hard to see with so little time on the clock why. King to b2 was better, but you will see why. Vincent went king to a4. He wants to go over here, grab this pawn, move the king, and queen the d pawn. But as you'll see, it is quite troublesome. Knight captures on h5 by Carlsen, and here we have king to a5. You can't capture the pawn just yet, because here you see that the bishop is again oddly placed, because knight c3 check picks up the bishop. So here Vincent has to move the king yet again, king a5, and now knight back to f6 defends the pawn, and now Carlsen is again in an endgame where Vincent is really down to his last minute and he's up a pawn. A knight pair against a bishop pair, this is really, this is just legendary. King to b6, going for the d6 pawn. We have king to f7 by Carlsen and king to c7. And here with king to e7, Carlsen protects the base of his pawn chain. Now comes bishop to e3. And again, it's a very delicate position. You have to be very careful. Knight to d4. You cannot capture, otherwise you get two connected passed pawns. So you have to move the bishop. Bishop to g6, and now comes h5 by Carlsen, preparing to push h4. Bishop to f2, guarding the h4 square, and now knight to f3. We have bishop to f5, now controlling the h3 square, so if Carlsen starts pushing the f pawn, it will not be all that easy. Here, h4 would actually be a big mistake for Carlsen, because Vincent would get a chance to go back king b6, and then he would be able to protect the c4 pawn. So Carlsen immediately plays the absolute best move, knight d2, goes for the c4 pawn, and now you cannot protect it. Well, you can. Bishop to h4 by Vincent, pinning the knight, and now, of course, if you capture, then you will lose the e4 pawn. So here, Carlsen again goes for the best move, e3, prepares to advance his passed pawn. Now comes bishop to d3, controlling e2. Now comes knight to f3, attacking the bishop here, and now you have to capture. Bishop captures on f6 was played. We have king captures on f6, and now comes king captures on d6. Finally, Vincent gets his own passed pawn, but Carlsen goes h4 with two passed pawns. Carlsen is very fast. We have king to c7. Now Vincent is also ready to push his passed pawn to victory, and it's a very delicate position. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the best move for Carlsen in this position. You've been playing for 7 hours already. You don't want to make a mistake here. Pause the video and try to find the best move for black in this position. I'll give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, you are an excellent endgame player after 7.5 hours of struggle. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, h3 is not the way to go here. knight to d4 is the move, but we're just going to quickly show h3 because it's very interesting. If h3, then d6, and now if knight to d4, preparing knight e6 check, then f5 takes away the square from the knight. And now we get this very interesting series of moves. e2, bishop captures on e2, and now we have h2 going after this guy. And now d7, because now the pawn will queen with check, so you have to move the king. King captures on f5, and now bishop to f3, controlling the queening square. Knight captures d8 queen, and now after h8 queen, yes, black is up a knight, but queen d5 check, and it's very hard to calculate if you will be able to get out of all the checks. So h3 would be wouldn't be the best idea. Knight to d4. This is best because now this move is immediately met with this check, so there are no problems here. Here king to c8 was played, not allowing knight to e6 to come with check, but now we have e2. And it was in this position on move 81 that Vincent Keimer resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, we're going to show it. You do have to capture, or e1 brings the queen into the game. So after bishop captures, knight captures on e2, now you get d6, and after knight captures on f4, d7, knight here, there's nothing to do. You will get a queen, but after knight captures, king captures, the h pawn is simply too fast, and it's a winning endgame for black. So yeah, 81 moves against the world champion, really an impressive game, and everyone thought Vincent had at least a draw. He had a better position. He was maybe if Carlsen had the white pieces instead of Vincent, maybe Carlsen would have won with the white. But here Carlsen just shown what caliber of a player he is, because it's just insane how there's really nothing to do in the position, but he just makes you think there is, and then you waste time, then you get yourself in time trouble, and then you survive the first time trouble, you survive the second time trouble, but then finally in the third time trouble, you make an inaccuracy. Carlsen takes advantage of it, and it ends up in a win. So a tough first round for Vincent Keimer against the world champion. And he has to, rest up quickly, because tomorrow he faces Vishwanathan Anand with the black pieces. But that's the beauty of chess. That's what it's like to play with the big boys, and he might have a tough time in this tournament, but it will bring him a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Tony Mo at guitar, Hadi Sabati, Andrei Marius Tedorescu, Tucker Stjoblad, and Sander Bjokhors for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. We're definitely going to continue the Grenke Chess Classic, and if there will be time, we'll be doing the Capablanca Saga in between games. And for the end of the video, let's once again check out this very nice photo of Vincent giving Carlsen the stare. This is just a very powerful photo, so let's just enjoy it for a few seconds more. Well, there it is. I do hope you enjoyed it. Have an excellent rest of your what day is it today? I don't even know. Have an excellent rest of your Saturday, and I will see you soon. Hello everyone, and welcome to a really awesome game from the 1954 USSR Junior Championship that was held in Leningrad. It's a game between Mikhail Tal and Boris Spassky, so both of them future world champions, and this game comes as a suggestion from Farhad Torshabi. He said that I've never shown the game between Tal and Spassky, and I thought out of all the games that I've shown, and I've shown like over 2,000 of them, it'd be pretty impossible if I've never shown a game between Tal and Spassky. And then I went to check my videos, and what do you know? I've never made a video where Tal faces Spassky. I mean, who knew? And I decided to show you the first game they ever played. Maybe it's not the first game they ever played, it's the first official game in an official tournament that they ever played. Maybe they played a friendly blitz game, but I don't know. So it's a very nice game. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And if you enjoy seeing videos of first encounters, I will also include the first and second link in the description below. Will be Bobby Fischer's first encounter with Mikhail Botvinnik, and also I will include Mikhail Tal's first encounter with Vishwanathan Anand. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, as those are both really great games. Do check it out if you have the time as well. So like I said, Tal being 18 years old here, Spassky being 19. For those of you who may not know this, Spassky is still alive and well. He is 84 years old, back in Russia, and as far as I know, he is still in very good health, and few photos emerge of him from time to time. So just in case you didn't know this. And both of them, like for example Bobby Fischer got his Grandmaster title by qualifying for the 1959 Candidates Tournament, and they couldn't have like just anyone playing the Candidates Tournament, so they gave him the Grandmaster title. Tal got his Grandmaster title. He won the Soviet Championship, I think, in 1957, and Boris Spassky got his Grandmaster title by qualifying for the Candidates Tournament of 1956. So as you can see, they were all of them were ahead of their time, and they were playing much stronger than their rating would suggest. But that being said, let's check out the game, as like I said, it's quite a nice one. So Tal has the white pieces, and he opens with c4. So Tal goes for the English opening, and Spassky goes for knight to f6. So let's see what happens here. First ever game between Spassky and Tal. Knight to c3, we have e6 by Spassky, d4, and now striking towards the center with c5, going for that d4 pawn. We have d5, advancing the pawn, basically transposing into the Benoni defense, e captures, c captures, and now g6. And here, while e4 is a very often played move, even in those days and nowadays as well, Spassky goes for knight, Tal goes for knight to f3. He still waits for the e4 pawn, because this is a game from 1954, and Tal was already known as a pretty vicious Benoni player, and here Spassky employing the Benoni defense against Tal himself meant that Spassky was trying to kind of mess with his head a little bit, but also just to show him who's boss. And probably Tal tried to adjust to this by maybe playing some offbeat ideas in the opening. So here we have bishop to g7, and now bishop to f4. It seems like a normal developing move, but it actually comes with a trick. If Spassky just castles here, bishop to d6 attacks the rook and the c5 pawn. So Spassky can't do it just yet. Spassky plays d6 here, and now h3, not allowing a normal developing move, or like for example bishop to g4. We have castles, and now e3 by Misha. And here Tal doesn't advance the pawn all the way to e4, even though it's a perfectly fine square for the pawn, so he's trying to play a bit of a different game. So here we have knight to e8. Later on, this knight is gonna come to d6, as you'll see, but now you are making room for this pawn to come to f5, and you're also freeing up the dark square bishop to be a very powerful piece. So here, bishop to e2, knight to d7, now the knight can come to e5, and here we have castles. And now there is one game in the database that reached this exact same position, but after knight to e5, it is as of move 11 that this position has never been repeated again since this game of the Leningrad Junior Championship of 1954. Here we have bishop captures on e5, that's a very strong knight, so here Misha eliminates it. We have d captures on e5, and now knight to d2. So here Tal already has a passed d pawn, which is incredible, as it's only move 13. But Spassky says no problem. That's just gonna give me a beautiful outpost for my knight on d6, and I'm gonna be blockading your pawn without much trouble. So here f5. And now queen to b3. Already the queen is on a very nice square. Ideas like d6 are coming, so you have to be careful of some future discoveries here. So knight to d6 from Spassky, and now knight to c4. So it's a great square for the knight, and now e4. Spassky also grabs some space in the center, controlling the d3, the f3 squares. Now the bishop really comes alive, and here Tal goes knight to b5. An interesting approach here might be something like just captures, queen captures, and knight b5 then, because then you can start pushing your d pawn right away, but black shouldn't really be in all that much trouble. For example, d6 check doesn't really do all that much. King h8. You're gonna play knight c7, attack the rook here, and after this guy moves, you're gonna defend the pawn with rook to d1. But in the long run, this pawn might really just be a weakness, so Tal decides against this. Tal decides to go knight to b5 right away. Now it's Spassky who captures on b5, captures, and now b6, just defending the pawn here. We have d6 by Tal advancing his passed pawn, and now bishop to d7, pushing the queen back, queen to b3, and now the incredible b5. Spassky doesn't care about any discoveries because wherever the knight goes to and delivers a discovery, we all know what follows, and that is of course c4. And here Tal did what he did best. He just decided, all right, so obviously I have to sacrifice something. We're gonna sacrifice a piece, but it's not really gonna be an actual sacrifice since he's gonna get a lot of material back. So here we have knight to b6 check, a nice discovery from the queen, also connecting with the rook. So black's only move here is c4. This is what Spassky goes for. Bishop captures on c4, another check. We have b captures, and now queen captures on c4 again with check. So you could move the king, but Spassky prefers rook to f7, just blocking check and keeping the rook on the 7th rank. We have knight captures, queen captures, and now as the b2 pawn is under attack, just queen to b3. Tal defends it and now says, all right, the position is pretty good for both white and black. I have two rooks, but you have a rook and the bishop pair. So black should be preferred, but white does have this incredible pass pawn on d6. So it's a tricky position, something that we all know Tal thrives in. But in his younger days, Spassky was also a pretty crazy player himself. So I don't think he minded this at all. So here he played bishop to e5, going after this d6 pawn, and now rook 8 to c1. Tal says, all right, have the pawn. Be my guest, and then I'm going to play rook f to d1, and what are you going to do then? So here, capturing the pawn now with the overseeing eye of the engines, we know that just capturing a pawn doesn't really hurt black's position, because if bishop captures on d6 and rook f to d1, what was Tal's idea? You can simply defend it with queen to f8. This is the only good move for black, and now point is, after, let's say, we defend the bishop once again, you can move it, and now the rook from f7 guards the bishop on d7. That's why the rook to f7 was a better move than king to h8 in that position. So after rook 8 to c1, we have king to g7. Spassky refrains from capturing the pawn just yet. You can see that Tal's mind tricks were already fully operational at the age of 18. So king to g7, and now rook f to d1. Tal just defends his passed pawn. We have a5 by Spassky, and now rook to c7. So now the light square bishop cannot move, as queen captures on f7 would happen. Here we have queen to e8, and now queen to d5. So again, what do you play here? Spassky does have the bishop pair, but it's very hard to get it to be even at all operational, let alone fully operational. So here, simply a4, and now Tal finds a brilliant move, and that is b4. Not really a no-brainer. The pawn here should capture en passant, otherwise you're just gonna start pushing that pawn and promote it. So here a captures on b3 en passant, we have a captures on b3, and here Spassky played bishop back to f6, and now this means trouble, because here there is one move for Tal that wins the game, and it's quite a beautiful move. It's the greatest move you can ever play. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find this idea with white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on knowing that the greatest move you can ever play is always pawn to b4. So for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's b4. And b4 does seem like a reasonable thing to do, because it doesn't seem like you can improve your position any further. I mean, the queen doesn't really have any useful moves. Maybe queen to c5 can be used to maybe defend the b6 square later on, and then you would pretty much have all of the squares covered. But other than that, there's really no good move other than b4. So b4 is the move you should play here. Point is that black's only reasonable defense is queen to e5, which now falls short to b5. And now the problem is, if you just go, for example, bishop captures on b5, then queen captures on f7, and you're getting checkmated. King h8 and queen captures on h7 is checkmate. So you will not be able to capture with the bishop, and you really don't want to capture with the queen, because then the rook captures and it defends your pawn, then you just continue pushing the pawn. What you would have to do is something like queen b2 to guard the b6 square, but then we just play queen to c5, hence queen to c5 in at maybe the start of this whole variation to guard the b6 square up front. And now black really doesn't have anything better than queen captures on b5, queen captures, and now if you play bishop captures on b5, and now you don't play d7, even though it's something you want to play, because black can simply block with bishop to d3. And now you're never promoting this pawn, because if you move the rook from the 7th rank, the d7 pawn falls, and if you try and push it, the bishop of course covers the d8 square. So this will not do. However, there is the rook to b1 move. You attack the light square bishop, and wherever the bishop moves doesn't really matter. Or if the rooks get traded off, for example, captures and captures, now you move the bishop, and now we simply play rook to b8, and that's it. White wins the game. For example, king f7, we're going to bring a queen into the game, captures, captures, and now you get this position. 4 pawns each, a rook against the bishop. With perfect play, white will win this. So this is in the position here if Tal plays b4, but for some reason Tal doesn't play b4. Tal plays rook to b7 here. And rook to b7 is such a funky move. I mean, you would really have to get into Tal's head to understand rook to b7. If any of you guys have an idea why Tal played rook to b7 here, I mean, it's basically the only square where you don't want your rook to be. I mean, you want this pawn to be able to be promoted. So rook to b7. I don't know. It really is a weird move. So I really don't know what the idea behind it is. Like I said, if you guys can help out, do share in the description, in the comments. But you cannot write in the description. That is something only I can do. So here, black played queen to e5, which is the defense we discussed if b4 was played, but now b4 simply doesn't work, because now we just trade captures, captures, and now bishop to c6. It's like basically Tal played this voluntarily to not be able to play it. Rook captures on f7, king captures, and now our rook is under attack. We move it. Now king e6, sufficiently defending the d7 square. This is defended, and you will not be winning this game. If anything, black is better here. The bishop pair will always overcome a single rook. So here after, not always, but most of the time. So here queen to e5, and now Tal avoids a queen trade with queen to c4. So I'm still guessing there's some reason Tal put the rook on b7, but it's just very hard to spot it. I guess you could argue that it defends the b6 square, so you could push it all the way to b6, but I don't know. Maybe it's a very silly thing that I'm missing, or maybe it's some sort of a deep idea that doesn't work, and Tal maybe thought it works. Who knows? But okay, now Spassky said, all right, you missed your chance, now it's my turn. And now Spassky strikes with f4. We have e captures on f4, queen captures on f4, and now g3. But this is now already very, very dangerous. Queen to f3 by Spassky, and now you can see that okay, Spassky cannot move the light square bishop, because then Tal just wins. But also, if this dark square bishop moves, then Spassky wins. There's this weakness of the f2 pawn. And here, Tal kind of disregarded that. He played queen to d5, and now it's Spassky's turn to shine. So feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Spassky in the quickest way possible while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on playing the move Spassky played, which is bishop to c3. Weird stuff, I know, and especially to those of you who found the move Spassky didn't play, but it's much shorter and wins the game much quicker, and that is bishop to e6. It's a brilliant move. Attacks the queen and the white rook here right away at the same time. So here you don't really have a better move than rook captures on f7 with check. Bishop captures, your queen is still under attack, and you don't really have well, you don't really have a good square for the queen. The rook is defended by the queen. If you move it, the black queen will just gobble it up. You can't go here, you can't go here. Only move is queen to d2, and that's exactly where we want the white queen, because now e3 just wins the game. You'd have to capture, then comes queen captures on g3 with check, then you're gonna capture the h pawn, the e pawn, and then the bishops are just gonna completely, you know, join the party, and white will lose this terribly. So this was in the position. However, Spassky went for bishop to c3. He had a different idea, which is also very cool. Now the f2 pawn is under attack. Tal defended it, and now comes king to h6. Very, very sneaky idea, preparing something very, very devious. Tal played queen to d1. He offered a queen trade, but now just queen to f6, defending this and also keeping an eye on the bishop. You have to be careful. Queen to c1 check could lose you the dark square bishop, and you don't want that to happen. So here, Tal went queen to e2, but now comes bishop to d4 with a triple attack on the f2 pawn here, and also just e3 is going to be very unpleasant when it comes, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So here, rook to b4 was played, but it doesn't really matter. Just e3, and there's really not much more white can do here. Tal's best hope is to just capture the bishop here, and then go for something queen captures, trade queens, captures, and then, for example, captures, and bishop captures on h3. So you might try playing this, but the bishop just stops the pawn, controls the b5 square, so you don't really have a chance of advancing this pawn, and the king will very easily join the action. It's not even close for white to hold. So instead, after e3, we have queen to d3 by Tal, but now, while you could play something, well, just plain like e captures on f2, that's not what Spassky did. Spassky, of course, went for the move from the thumbnail. He played queen captures on f2 with check, and this is just fireworks. E captures on f2 was much more precise, but queen captures on f2 is also sufficient. It takes perfect play for white just to keep surviving. But okay, here Tal of course captured. We have e captures on f2 with check, and now you have to step back. If you keep guarding the f1 square with both the queen and the king, we just bring a queen into the game with check, queen captures, and now bishop to c6 check. And finally, Spassky's bishop pair is now fully operational. King h2, we're going to play rook captures on f1, and after white gobbles up the bishop, we're going to deliver rook to h1 checkmate. So this is how this whole thing can turn out if Tal just plays a silly move like king to g2. So Tal played king to h2, but it doesn't help him because now, again, Spassky can bring a queen into the game, he can bring a rook into the game, he can bring whatever, but he brings a knight into the game, and this delivers the this move with check. And again, if you don't capture the knight, if you play something like king to g2, then bishop to c6 check, and now there are no moves. You have to block queen f3. We're just gonna capture it with the rook. Rook captures on d4, and now this incredible knight to e3 check, king h2, rook f2 check, king g1, and now rook to f1 check, king to h2, and now as the bishop again covers the h1 square, rook to h1 with checkmate. So really incredible stuff. So after this pawn to f1 knight check, Tal decided, all right, there's really nothing to be done here. I have to give the queen back. So rook captures on f1, now again with threats of bishop c6 and rook to h1 checkmate. There's not much to be done. But if you don't capture the dark square bishop, you're just down 2 pieces, and that's, I mean, you can't play that. So here Tal captured on d4, and now we have first rook to f2 with check. You can't just go bishop to c6 right away, because then g4, and then okay, white creates an escape square here, but rook to f2 check is also very deadly. King to g1 was played, and here Tal just played rook to Spassky just played rook to f3, and it was in this position on move 45 that Mikhail Tal resigned the game, and the first game ever played between Spassky and Tal goes to Boris Spassky for this incredible victory with the black pieces. So the g pawn is attacked, the b pawn is attacked, and there's really nothing for you to do. If you defend here, you lose this pawn, and then okay, you have a pawn for a bishop, not really something you can play. And if you try defending this pawn by either defending it with rook or pushing it, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to play rook captures with check, and then even if you defend the bishop guards the h3 square, we're going to pick up this one with check as well. So yeah, after rook to f3, Tal resigned, and Spassky won this brilliant victory. And what does it all come down to? It all comes down to this position where Tal failed to play b4 as soon as opportunity was presented. If you miss your chance to play b4 in this opening or in many other openings, you might also miss your chance to win the game. So That was the first ever official encounter between Mikhail Tal and Boris Spassky. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, if you enjoy first encounters, do check out Bobby Fischer versus Mikhail Botvinnik. Really an outstanding game. I think I really covered that one well, even though it's a 2-year-old video. And also check out Anand versus Tal here. Also a very, very nice video. First two links in the description below. So yeah, once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Austin Del Rio, Justin Brockhouse, Frederick Rusek, Akram the Pilot, and KD Nuggets for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphe saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you have a first encounter that you would enjoy seeing, do comment in the comment section below. See you soon. Hello everyone, and happy Valentine's Day everyone. We have an excellent game here between, once again, Leela Chess Zero and Stockfish. As you all know, we've covered a few games by Leela in the past few days. Leela won the 2019 TCEC Cup, that's season 14, and now we have the Super Finals. Leela faces the strongest version of Stockfish in a series of 14 games. Not 14, it's season 14, in a series of 100 games, and this is game 49. In the first 48 games, the score is 24-24. So far, Leela is tied with Stockfish. This is game 49, a very exciting game, and it's a very complex game. So I'll try to colorize it, let's put it that way, as to the best of my abilities, but I really think it's just all about the end game, and it's gonna fit right into our Capablanca saga, as well, it's just a wonderful middle game that leads to a dominant end game. So I do hope you enjoyed that as well. Now let's check it out. As we already mentioned, the openings are predefined, so here we'll have a nice Benoni. We have d4 by Leela, knight to f6, c4. We have e6, knight to f3, and c5. Through a bit of a different move order, but d5, e captures, c captures, and now d6. And with knight to c3, we have the modern variation of the Benoni defense. We have g6, bishop to f4, with some ideas of maybe attacking this pawn in the future, but most likely this knight is coming to d2 and then later to c4 to help out with the attack against the d6 pawn, if black allows it. But if black plays everything correctly, of course, black will not allow that. Bishop to g7, and now, like I said, you can't go for the pawn immediately due to this queen a5 check. You'll have to go back with the knight, otherwise you're going to lose the knight, and then knight captures on d5 just wins a pawn for black. Here you can capture with the queen, but then bishop captures, you don't want to lose the rook, so you have to play the bishop back, captures, and here black will just be a pawn up. So after bishop to g7, we have queen to a4 check by Leela, forcing the bishop out, and only after bishop to d7, now queen to b3. The queen is now nicely developed and already attacking the b7 pawn. We have queen to c7 defending, and now comes e4. And here castles, and this is nothing new. This has been played by human players over and over again throughout chess history. We have knight to d2, preparing this knight to either come to c4, but for the moment it's helping out with the defense of the e4 pawn. Knight to h5, pressuring the bishop on f4, and the bishop goes back to e3. Also with knight to h5, Stockfish made room for this pawn to come to f5, so now comes f5. Leela's king is still in the center, so it makes perfect sense to bust open the center. We have e captures, bishop captures, and now comes h3, with the threat of g4 winning the piece. And this position was reached a few times. It was reached in 2017 in the Isle of Man tournament between Ryazantsev and Donchenko. And here knight back to f6 was played to not allow g4 to come, with black losing a piece. But here Stockfish played bishop to d7, and it's, as of this moment, move 14. We have a completely new game. We have knight d to e4. Leela's plan is now to develop the light square bishop, and this knight will at some point come from g5 all the way to e6. On e6, this knight will become a monster, and white will, of course, have to eliminate it at some point, and then Leela will be able to create a very strong pass pawn on e6. This is the plan. So first king to h6, king to h8. You don't want to allow this king to stand as diagonal, and now not bishop to e2 or d3 because we already explained the plan. But here also this would just give black too easy a game. Either you would have to give up your dark square bishop, which is not something you want to do. With black's weakened king side, the dark square bishop is a very strong piece, and you will either have to now waste the tempo, or play a bishop somewhere you don't want to, or defend the bishop, and then black will again eliminate white's bishop pair. So as planned, Lila goes to bishop to c4. We have a6 preparing b5. Of course, Lila prevents this. a4, and now comes bishop back to a5. Now there's no problem of white playing g4 because you can always capture the knight. Knight captures, knight f4, and all is well here. Black now achieved pretty much everything black wants. The knight is coming back into the game. The rooks will be connected, and the game will be quite, quite enjoyable for black. So after bishop to f5, Lila continues with the plan. Knight to g5. Now the knight is coming to e6. We have queen to e7, not allowing the knight to come to e7 with an attack on the queen, but also pressuring white's king that is still in the center. You try playing a game up until move 18 with your king on e1 against Stockfish. So finally Lila castles, and now knight to d7. And here we have knight to e6. Finally, the knight is here, and now perhaps this is playable without capturing the knight, but yeah, for human standards, you do not want this knight to be on e6, where white can just leave it there for as long as white likes, or give up the bishop on g7, which is a very strong piece, as we already mentioned. Bishop captures was played. We have d captures. Now, as we said, this now pawn is promoted to a very strong passed e6 pawn, and knight to e5, pressuring the bishop here, and now comes bishop to d5, pressuring the b7 pawn. So knight to c6, blocking the bishop's attack towards the pawn, and rook 8 to e1. Now all of Lila's pieces are developed. Still, there's the question of rook on f1, but for the time being, it's fine where it is. Rook 8 to b8. Again, you don't want this bishop on the rook on this diagonal, and also perhaps b5 will be an idea later on. We have knight to e4. And now comes knight back to f6. And here you might think, oh, it's an excellent opportunity to go knight to g5 with some threats of knight to f7, but white doesn't really have any threats here. For example, if knight captures the bishop, queen captures here, then rook f5 just attacks the queen and also pressures the knight. Queen moves, now comes king g8, and white doesn't really have any threats here. Black can even push back the knight with h6 whenever black wants, and the knight is pretty much stuck there defending this e6 pawn for the moment. So first bishop to g5, just pinning the knight here, and there's also a lot of pressure against this knight. Knight to b4 with a double attack against the bishop, and now comes knight to c3. And here black cannot, exchange some pieces in the center to alleviate the pressure, because if you play knight captures here, then you get knight captures and black is lost. There's really nothing to do here. Your queen is under attack, you cannot capture because the knight is pinned. If you go here, e7 attacks the queen and the rook, this will of course be winning. Even if you go queen e8, e7 still wins the game. Your rook is under attack. After you move it, king f7, now you get bishop captures, and now knight c7, forcing the queen to move, and then the pawn will promote. Let's say queen g8, now you bring a queen into the game. Rook captures, you can capture with the rook, threatening to win the queen. After rook f8, you can go rook captures, queen captures, and now after rook to e1, you're just up a whole rook. Of course, a completely winning game for Lila. So, after knight c3, you cannot capture, we have h6. Forcing Lila to decide what to do with the bishop. And of course, you don't want to go back. So bishop captures on f6. We have rook captures on f6, and now comes g3. Preparing perhaps f4 and h4. And here we have rook b to e8. I thought rook b to f8 would be a nice move here. Obviously not. Stockfish decides to go for this rook to e8 move. Perhaps after the queen moves, Stockfish wants to play this rook to e7 to block the e6 pawn, but also to keep an eye on the b7 pawn. As for now, the knight cannot move, as the queen is also pressuring the pawn alongside with the bishop. But okay, we have h4 here, rook to f5, and now bishop goes back to g2. Well, the knight and the rook are pressuring the bishop here, so there's no reason for bishop to stay there. It's much safer on g2. We have bishop to d4, pressuring now the f2 pawn. As you can see now, it's quite useful that it's this rook that's on f1, not that this rook remained here and that Lila played this rook to e1. So, like we said, for the moment, this rook on f1 is quite useful still. We have knight to e2, attacking the bishop, and now comes a5. And now you could capture here, doubling black's pawns, but there's no rush. First, bishop to h3, attacking Stockfish's rook on f5. We have rook to e5 now, and now knight captures on d4. C captures, and now queen to c4, pressuring the d4 pawn. Knight to c6, knight defends the pawn, and now comes queen back to d3. Attacking the g6 pawn, and now queen to g7 defending. And we have rook to e4 now. A nice rook lift, also rook to g4 will be a very nice idea, creating a double attack against the g6 pawn, but also now this rook is welcome to join the game. Rook to c5, and here comes king to g2. We have rook to e7, like we said, perhaps this is one of the reasons why that rook to e8 instead of rook to f8 was played, but who knows. We have rook f to e1, Lila doubles rooks on the e file, and now comes queen to f8. We have rook to g4 with a double attack against the g6 pawn, and now comes rook to e5, with the idea that, well, if rook captures, knight captures also protects the g6 pawn, but now Lila can actually capture here and pin the knight, so the knight cannot capture here. This would win Lila the pawn for the moment, but it allows some ideas with queen to f3 check, and then you don't know if you will be able to untangle here. So, after rook to e5, we have first rook to f4, attacking Stockfish's queen on f8, and now comes queen to e8. And now rook to c1. So, Lila keeping the pressure, it's Stockfish to move. We have rook to g7. Not a lot of things to do here. Now comes queen to b3. A very nice move, and now comes queen to e7, again just blocking the pawn, keeping an eye on the b7 pawn, and here comes bishop to g4. We have h5 attacking the bishop to f3, and now what do you do here? This was Lila's plan. Now bishop captures on c6 is a real threat, as black would lose a pawn, so Lila decides to give up this pawn for some excellent counterplay and for taking this game into a very favorable endgame. Knight d8, now attacking the e6 pawn, but first rook to c8, now pinning the knight, king to h7 unpinning, and now first rook captures on d4, just grabbing this pawn, knight captures on e6, eliminating finally this very strong e6 pawn with an attack on the rook, and now rook to d5. Knight to c5, attacking the queen, queen d2, and now captures on d5. Queen captures on d5, and this is the position Lila saw that was more favorable than that one where she grabs a pawn and allows the queen f3 check. Here, Stockfish played queen to f6 and allowed Lila to go for this bishop captures on h5. Why did Stockfish allow this? This is also a very important idea. The problem is rook a8 can attack the a5 pawn. It's impossible to properly defend the a5 pawn. So here, if you tried something, let's say queen d7, attacking the rook goes to a8, you defend b6, but now rook b8, and after queen c7, it seems like black is doing perfectly all right. This rook will now have to move or keep on going places, but queen a8, and now there is no defense against rook to h8 checkmate. This is one of the problems with Stockfish's position here. You cannot avoid this. You can go rook f7, but then just bishop d5 wins the rook. If you move it further, then it will of course be checkmate. So there's a lot of poison to the position. So that's why after this queen captures on d5, Stockfish decided on a different line of defense. Queen f6 and allows this bishop captures on h5. And it's very interesting that this line does not lose material for Stockfish. It just gives Lila a favorable endgame. Because now, okay, you cannot capture. Do you see what happens? How white wins if you capture the pawn? Even feel free to pause the video here, and it's a nice little tactic and solve the position for white. White is winning this. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent winner of queens. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's actually just queen captures, and after the queen blocks, rook h8 check. This is the move you had to find. After king captures, black loses the queen, and it's all over. Now black can just keep playing the game, or resign with dignity and allow this very nice checkmate. So after bishop captures on h5, we have queen to f7. offering a queen trade. Now Lila has to accept it. We have queen captures, rook captures, and now even bishop to d1 defending the a4 pawn. But it does not keep material. Lila is up a pawn for the moment, but black has knight to d3, attacking the b2 and f2 pawn. So f4, defending the pawn, as the rook was also attacking it. Knight captures, and now bishop to c2. The threat is, of course, h5, as the g6 pawn is pinned. We have king to g7, and now king to f3. So now, if you look at this position, this is the position Lila saw. The material is equal on the board, but there are a few key differences. Lila has 2 pawn islands, and Stockfish has 3 pawn islands, which is, while the rooks are still on the board, highly favorable for the white rook, as the rook will be very happy attacking all of these pawns, and he will just gobble all of them up. On the other hand, Lila has a bishop against a Stockfish knight, and when the play is on both sides of the board, of course, this favors the bishop. So d5, Stockfish starts pushing the passed pawn. We have rook to c5 now, attacking both of the pawns here. Rook to d7, Stockfish puts the rook behind the passed pawn, as that's how it's done. And now just g4. We have d4, Stockfish continues pushing the passed pawn, but now just rook to b5, attacking the knight here. Knight to c4, and now bishop to d3, blocking the pawn and also attacking the knight. So the pawn cannot be pushed any further. We have rook to c7, defending, and now comes h5. G captures on h5, and now rook captures on h5, not allowing the pawn structure to be messed up. And now you can see that the material is still equal on the board, but the 2 connected passed pawns Lila has on the king side are simply, well, very powerful. Rook to c6, but now rook to h7 check. The bishop is protecting the rook here. We have king to f8, and now even rook captures this pawn. Knight to d6, rook to a7, attacking this pawn. Now comes rook to c3, king defends the bishop, and now rook to a3. There's not all that much you can do here. Rook captures on a5 is played, and now Stockfish is just losing pawn by pawn. Rook to a2 check, a few more moves were played. King e1, rook a1 check, king d2, rook a2 check, king goes to c1, now preparing to attack the rook, rook a3, and now we have rook to d5, offering the bishop for a knight. Knight b7, but now rook captures on d4, knight to c5, double attack on the bishop, bishop c2, knight to e6, and now just rook to c4. This is now completely winning. The rook is defending all of the pawns, and white is just up so many pawns. So a few more moves were played. Knight to g7, we have g5 here, knight to e8 was played, we have g6 here, and after king to g7, king to b2 was played, attacking the rook, and after rook to h3, it was in this position that Stockfish resigned the game. Yes, let's all say it together. It was in this position that Stockfish resigned the game. Not a lot of times you will hear this. But yeah, an excellent victory for Lila, and this is the first time in the match, game 49, that Lila is now in the lead in this 100-game match. So if Lila will be able to win this, Lila will be the TCEC 2000 Season 14 champion. And someone mentioned on Twitter, I forgot who it was, but I saw the tweet. Someone said that the match Kasparov versus Karpov was, shut down after 48 games because it was simply unable to continue. And now in game 49, Lila takes the lead. So AI doesn't mind; they can play just a million games if needed. And like I said, in the description below there will be a link to the Lila Chess Zero blog where you can follow up on Lila's progress. And also the first link in the description below will be a link where you can follow live this game between Lila and Stockfish. They are already on game, I believe, 52 perhaps, I believe, and Lila is now even 2 points in the lead, so we'll be showing some more games of Lila Chess Zero. So that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Alan Black, Prachar Maini, Bernard Moore, Jan Mishkovsky, and Berus for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. We'll check up on Lila Chess Zero, but also, of course, continuing the Capablanca saga. Thank you all, and I will see you soon. Hello everyone and welcome to another game from round 9, the last round of the Granky Chess Classic 2019. We mentioned we were going to show another game as we do have to show the standings, and of all the games I've chosen this one as I wanted to show as much games as possible played by young Vincent Keimer, and this one is, well, really interesting. So I do hope you enjoy it. We do have some nice footage from the Granky Chess Classic video team, so let's enjoy that for a brief moment. Here we have some nice footage of Paco, a relatively short one, but you know, we work with what we have. And here we have some footage of Vincent. There you have it. Adjusting the brightness seems to be. There we go. It's a bit of a longer clip, but the camera will zoom out so you can also see the position. There you go. Alright, so I do hope you enjoyed that. Now let's check out the game. It's really interesting, really enjoyable Benoni, so let's just check it out. Keimer has the white pieces and he opens with d4. It seems that Keimer opens every game with the d4 with white, and I really like that because he's very young and he wants a fight. So he basically says black can choose whatever system he wants to play. We have knight to f6, c4, now we have e6, knight to f3, and c5. So preparing the Benoni, d5, and now d6 first, not capturing immediately. Knight to c3, e captures on d5, c captures on d5, and we have the standard setup of the Benoni defense. g6 by Paco, we have h6, and now bishop to g7. And Vincent goes for this now pretty much the most popular line against the Benoni, which goes with h3, e4, and the bishop to d3. So e4, defending the d5 pawn, also grabbing more space in the center. We have castles by Paco, and now bishop to d3. We have a6 by Black, preparing some expansion on the queen side, and a4. Vincent prevents this. Knight to h5 now, hoping to get this f5 move in while Vincent's king is still in the center, and Vincent doesn't allow it. He plays g4, doesn't really care about messing up the pawn structure in front of his king, as Black already also castled king side. We have knight back to f6 by Paco, and now bishop to f4. A nice developing move. The bishop also has a safe square on g3 now, and the d6 pawn might be a bit of a nuisance for Black, as White might decide to go for some maneuvers like knight to d2 to c4 to pressure the d6 pawn. But with knight to e8 now, preparing f5 this way, and the g4 also works as a you know, further insurance that Black doesn't play f5. And here there is one game in the database where queen to e2 was played, but here we have queen to d2 by Vincent, and now we have a completely new game on our hands. So knight to d7, with ideas of maybe going knight to e5, but also with ideas of pushing c4 and going knight to c5. And here you could go for bishop h6 right away, but then queen to f6 is a bit of a problem for White, as the knight on f3 is undefended due to this g4 move. And now if captures, then Black is faster. You're already threatening to capture the rook on h1 with check. So Vincent first castles, and now h5. And here it's a very interesting moment. Who's busting whose defenses here with h5? Is White under attack here or Black? Well, we'll just have to see. We have g captures on h5, and now not capturing immediately, but first knight to e5. Threatening knight captures on f3, the knight is still undefended, which would lose White the queen. So Vincent has to react to this. We have knight captures on e5, d captures on e5, and now bishop to g5, attacking the queen here. f6 by Black, pushing the bishop back, bishop to e3, and now you do have a couple of options to choose from. You could go bishop captures on h3, you could go g captures on h5, but Paco goes for the most interesting line, and it's one of the reasons why I also decided to show this game, c4. And here Vincent has to make a choice. Does he want to go back with bishop to e2, which seems to be the safest choice, or does he want to capture on c4, grabbing more material and allowing knight to d6 and more activity for Black? Vincent decides to go for the bravest choice. Bishop captures on c4, And now comes knight to d6, attacking the bishop here. And now again, Vincent has to make a choice. Does he wants to go back and go for this bishop captures on h3 line, rook e1 and f5, giving black a whole lot of activity, or does he want to go for the one that he chose, queen to e2, just defending the bishop here? And now again, it's not only defending the bishop, but it's also an attacking move, because if Paco decides to go for bishop captures on h3, now you go h captures on g6, and you have this very clear path to victory, and black, it will be very hard for black to defend this. So after queen to e2, Paco doesn't waste time with this bishop captures on h3 idea, rather he goes f5. And now you don't have time for this. If you go for this now, then you get queen to h4. And now what do you do? If e captures on f5, just bishop captures on f5, and after bishop to d3, it's hard to defend. Your queen constantly has to keep an eye on this bishop. After bishop d3, you get e4. And now after you go back, just rook to f6, rook will capture on g6, and it's game over for white. So Vincent cannot go for any slow plays here after f5. Here Vincent plays f4, and Paco just jumps into the attack with the queen to h4. And now again, your queen is still protecting this bishop here. You don't really have a good way of defending the h3 pawn. Queen to g3 check is an idea. So this is how Vincent goes about it. He plays bishop to c5, just pins that knight as the rook is still on f8, but it's not really pinning it, since if knight captures bishop and the queen is not protecting it, then it's a problem. You will win 2 bishops for a rook. Which is not something you want to do, but there was no better way. Here, queen to g3 was played by Paco, and now if you defend it, now it's just 2 bishops for a rook. You can just exchange queens, knight captures, and now after captures you will simply capture here, and you've won 2 bishops for a rook, which is of course better for the side that grabbed the 2 bishops. So here Vincent decides to go king to h1, and now we have just queen captures on h3. And here's the problem. Now Vincent loses another pawn, and he has to block with the queen. The problem is he can't repeat moves here, because queen g3 check, king h1, Paco will not repeat queen h3 check. He will go queen to h4 check, and after king g1, e captures on f4. And now, after bishop captures on d6, yes, you do win the knight and attack the rook, but here comes bishop to d4 check. Rook has to block, and now f captures on e4, and you get this massive attack for just a piece basically, and it will be very hard for white to defend here. For example, if you grab the rook, then it's over. Queen g3 check, king f1, and now even bishop to h3 check is coming. King e1, not just bishop captures with check, captures with check. King d2, king d1, or even better than that, just blocking with the queen. You have to make some room for your king. Queen captures with check, queen to d1, not just queen captures, king captures, and rook captures bishop, defending the pawn here. And now you have 2 connected pass pawns. You are up 2 pawns, and it will be an easily winning endgame for black. So the few options that are here aren't all that great for Vincent. So Vincent decides just to block with the queen, and now Paco just grabs the queen and the 2 bishops. With queen captures on h2, king captures, and now knight captures on c4. Bishop captures on f8, king captures on f8, and now h captures on g6 by Vincent. It's a very nice pawn, but you know, you're still down 2 bishops for a rook. E captures on f4, we have e captures on f5, bishop captures on f5, and now rook 8 to e1. And Paco doesn't mind. He wants to trade rooks and enjoy his bishop pair, with white having as few pieces on the board as possible. Rook captures on e8, king captures on e8, rook e1 check, and now just bishop to e5. Seems like a blunder, because b3 can just kick away the defender of the bishop, but then knight e3, and you're still not gaining anything along the e file. So we have knight to d1 now, defending the pawn here. And also if knight e3, then knight can capture it now, but bishop captures on g6. Paco now grabs even more material, and now you can see that the 2 bishops are simply too powerful. King to g2 with bishop to c2, and now king to f3. We have king to d7, getting out of the e file, and now knight to f2. We have king to d6, and now comes rook to c1, attacking the bishop, but now just knight to e3. And it was in this position on move 36, before even reaching time control, that Vincent Keimer resigned the game. Even though he had over 5 minutes on the clock, and Paco had, I believe, a minute and a half, but it's enough. This position plays itself. King's just gonna grab the d5 pawn, then you're just gonna pick up all the other pawns here, and white has no counterplay. Let's say knight e4 check, you just pick it up, knight c3, king c4, you're gonna go to b3, you're gonna win the b2 pawn, and it's all over. So yeah, after this knight to e3 move, Vincent resigned the game, and a very nice victory for Paco here, who played a brilliant attacking game, especially since he chose that line with c4, where Vincent had to make a choice whether he wants to go bishop e2 or capture on c4. He just allowed black a lot of activity, and all of a sudden, without even knowing where white went wrong, found himself on the losing side of this attack. Which is what usually happens when you play against the Benoni, if you don't play well against the Benoni. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and we do have the standings after the final round. And I made a mistake in the previous video. I told you that Maxim Vachier-Lagrave clinched 3rd place, but it's actually Magnus Carlsen first with 7.5, then Fabiano Caruana with 6, and then Arkady Naidic has better additional criteria, so he's 3rd with 5 points. Then Maxim Vachier-Lagrave with 5, then 3 of them with 4.5, Vishwanathan Anand, Peter Svidler, Levon Aronyan, and then Francisco Vallejo Pons with 4, and then Georg Mayer and Vincent Keimer with 2 points. So it seems Vincent finished last, but he did grab 2 points, and it's not just any 2 points. He won a game against Georg Mayer, and also drew games against Levon Aronyan and Peter Svidler. If you draw against Peter Svidler and Levon Aronyan, doesn't matter what you do with the rest of your games. It's still a great tournament, especially for Vincent, who is well, about 300 rating points lower rated than anyone else here, and 100 rating points lower rated as, I don't know, Georg Mayer is 2600 and Vincent is 2500. So even Mayer is almost 200 rating points lower rated than everyone else, and Vincent is even 100 rating points lower rated than Mayer. So I think 2 points out of 9 is an excellent achievement for young Vince. But yeah, once again, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I would like to thank Charles Cotton, Miguel Martinez Chapa, Barry McMurdoch, Charles Adelman, and Daniel Binder for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the Capablanca saga, as we do have to finish that, a few more games in the Rice tournament in New York, and then we are perhaps checking up another tournament. We'll see about that, and then we're going to Lasker versus Capablanca, the match. So yeah, thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. Hello everyone, and welcome to round 5 of the 2018 Candidates Tournament. Here we have an extremely interesting game between Levon Aronyan and Alexander Grishchuk. Now, Grishchuk had that moment yesterday where he missed a win with that bishop to h4 check move against Ding Liren, and I think that's basically the reason he spent a lot more time calculating all of the variations today. He wanted to make sure he doesn't miss anything, and Aronyan had a very nice bounce back game against Sergei Karakin, a nice win after that loss against Kramnik in round 3. Let's just see this game, and I really need your help assessing to what happened here, as some of the critical moments in the game are maybe they're easy to explain, maybe they're hard to explain, but more opinions is always better than one opinion. So let's see this game. Aronyan has the white pieces, and he opens with the d4. We have knight to f6, c4, g6, and now f3, something called the anti-Grunfeld. We have c5, d5, d6, we have e4, e6, knight to c3, e captures on d5, c captures on d5, and bishop to g7. And with a slightly different move order, we reach a variation of the Benoni. And here, thanks to Nikki, we already have a couple of photos from round 5. Here we have, I think this is basically the position on the board now. We have here Aronyan on the left, Grishchuk on the right. A very nice photo and a very nice moment of the game. Here we have a nice close-up of Grishchuk, and here we have a very nice close-up of Levon Aronyan. So now that we can really experience the moments in the game. Let's see how it continued. Here, knight g to e2 by Aronian. We have knight to d7, knight to g3, and the immediate h5 by Grishuk, with the idea of punishing this knight on g3, definitely at some point when black feels like it. Bishop to e2, now knight to h7. Knight to h7, not allowing Aronian to pin it with bishop to g5. Also, after Grishuk pushes h4, this knight on h7 will nicely support this pawn to be pushed to g5. So, bishop to f4, Aronian develops a piece, also attacks the d6 pawn, and here we have now queen to e7, defending it. Queen to d2, and now comes h4, kicking the knight back to f1. Knight to f1, and now g5, kicking the bishop back, bishop to e3, and now knight to e5. And black can be very satisfied here with what he accomplished in the opening. That knight is a bit weird on h7, but if he manages to activate it, all will be well. And here Aronian could go for a queenside castle and continue the game that way, but he goes for the immediate g3. And already you can see this was, I mean, probably a prepared move, as up to this point neither Grishuk nor Aronian really spent any time, and here in this position Grishuk spent, I believe it's around 16, maybe 17 minutes to decide what to do, because you have a lot of things to consider. For example, h captures on g3. You can consider pushing h3. You don't want to capture on g3, simply giving white an open h file. h3 doesn't really make sense. You give white f4 basically for free. So the thing probably Grishuk was considering is the move g4. But after f4, knight to f3 check. This checks the king, forks the queen. You do have to capture it. Bishop captures, pawn captures, and now after e5, it's probably a playable position for black, but white seemingly has a bit too much. This knight can always jump to b5, threaten d6. This e5 and f4 pawn are kind of locking this knight and bishop out of the game, and if you ever capture, then white will simply push d6, and he'll have a nice position. So after this g3 move, and after some 17 minutes of thinking, Grishuk decided for bishop to d7. And here Aronian decided, okay, I'm not going to have the open h file, I'm going to have the open g file. So g captures on h4, g captures on h4, and now rook to g1. Bringing this rook on a nice open file. This comes with a tempo on the bishop on g7, and although you could maybe defend it with rook to g8, you could also play knight to g6, simply blocking it, but doesn't really make sense moving the knight from such a nice active square like e5 all the way to g6. So Grishuk decides to go for the most active move, f5, immediately attacking white's center, and also now the queen is protecting the bishop on g7. Here we have f4, attacking the knight on e5, knight moves, and now e5. And here it again took Grishuk some time to really decide what to do, and I'm sure that the reason for this is that he missed that bishop to h4 check yesterday, but you know, maybe better to miss some opportunities and then not waste too much time than to waste too much time searching for nothing. That's always the question when you play. Here, you don't really gain anything. For example, grabbing this bishop seems like a great idea, but after you capture it and the knight captures, not really. Now white has beautifully positioned knights. Again, if you capture, then white's simply going to push d6. There's a very nice rook on this open g file. White is ready to castle queenside. This would be a very nice position for white. So here Grishuk played the immediate d captures on e5, and now d6. And here, it again took Grishuk a lot of time to calculate. In this game, Grishuk ran into time trouble very soon in the game. Here you have a lot of squares to consider for the queen. Queen e6, queen f6, queen f7, queen f8, queen d8. Basically, queen to f8 and queen to f7 pretty much run into the same idea. Queen f7 would be very hard to play, simply because now knight d5 threatens knight to c5 check. And after you prevent this, for example, yeah, that's basically the problem. You can't prevent it by castling, you have to prevent it by playing king to f8, and then you're really having a problem with all your pieces on the king side. The problem is if you castle, now white is simply winning after knight to e7 check. King moves, now comes h3, And now first you capture on f4, attacking white's bishop. Bishop captures, and now knight to f6. But now knight to g6, check. King moves, and now knight to e5, not grabbing the rook, attacking the queen. Queen moves, and now simply castle queenside, not to allow the king to stay on the same file as the queen. And now you have to play something, and no move you play is particularly good, as if you want to protect against bishop to c4, maybe play bishop to h6. Now the simple bishop to h6, and you don't really have a way of protecting your bishop here. There's no way for you to protect it at all. So a lot of things to consider here. You could play something like knight to g4, trying to block it this way, but that simply loses a piece. If you go knight to e4, attacking the queen, then queen d5 check is coming. You block with bishop to e6, now queen captures on b7. There's the threat of checkmate on g7, and after you stop this, bishop to f7, now comes d7, the quickest way to win. And after queen moves, she has to move somewhere, simply you exchange everything. Bishop captures on f7, rook captures, bishop captures on b8, and it's game over. There's really nothing to try here anymore. So after this d6 move, and after a lot of consideration, queen f6 was also possible, but Grishuk goes for the strongest queen e6. Now we have knight to b5. Here Arnon is threatening knight to c7 with check, forking the queen, forking the rook, forking everything. And Grishuk defends it with rook to c8. Seems like a very bold move, but there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. Grishuk will have plenty of compensation. Again, this took Arnon some time, but he decided, after all, a knight to c7 check was the strongest continuation. Rook captures on c7 was played, now d captures on c7, creating a powerful passed c-pawn, and now e captures on f4. And here Arnon played rook to d1. And here, this is what I meant. I don't know if I actually said it in the beginning of the video, but this is why engines simply calculate better than humans. Here Arnon did spend a fair amount of time, and he played rook to d1. A stronger idea would be queenside castle, because now after you play queenside castle, and after, of course, black captures the bishop, f captures on e3, now you have knight captures on e3, and after this bishop to h6 move, pinning this knight, and this wasn't hard to find. Pretty much everyone can find this. Now you have to find bishop to b5, and this was the hard move to find. And now white is winning. Now if you capture, bishop captures on e3, now you get c8 with promoting to a queen. The bishop on d7 is pinned. King moves, and now simply queen captures on h8. White doesn't need two queens to win. Bishop captures, rook captures, and after bishop captures on b5, queen captures, king moves, queen captures on h4. White basically white is up two exchanges, two rooks for a knight and a bishop, and completely winning game. But okay, definitely not an easy thing to find. So rook to d1. But this wasn't the critical moment in the game. This is, I mean, a perfectly easy thing to miss. Rook to d1, and now knight to g5. Here Arnon played c8, promoting to a queen. We have bishop captures, and now queen to d8 check. King moves to f7, and here queen to c7 check. And this is the critical moment of the game. Here Grishuk again spent fair amount of time, and he played king to g8, and king to g8 loses the game immediately. It's interesting that queen to e7 is actually a perfectly fine defense for black, but again, not an easy thing to find. Here, after queen to e7, you have to see that after bishop to c4 check, you have to go to king to f6. And now after queen captures, king captures, and bishop captures on c5, you have to go king to e8. Now black is threatening knight to f3 with check, picking up the rook, so after rook to d3 defending. Now b6, simply guarding your a7 pawn, bishop moves. Now you have to realize all the way from that position that this position is perfectly fine for black, even better for black. But who would come to this conclusion? Look at this bishop slicing all the way here, this bishop slicing all the way here, the rook slicing all the way here. It seems like your king is not destined for glory, but you know, it seems it works out. But he didn't find this, but the reason he didn't find it is probably because he didn't look for it. The thing is, after this queen to c7 move, he played king to g8, and here Aronian played queen to d8 check. Sorry, no, he didn't. First he played rook to d6, and this is the move that refutes the idea of king to g8. Here queen to f7 was played, and in this position Aronian played queen to d8 check, and this is the move that simply allows Grishuk to defend. And it's interesting that at the moment that Aronian played queen to d8 check, Grishuk immediately played queen to f8 as if he was expecting this move, but queen to d8 isn't the move that wins. Queen captures bishop with check wins the game. But it seems again simply either a case of double blindness or simply queen captures on c8 with check is a move so complicated that two 2800 players couldn't calculate it or didn't even consider calculating it. It's very hard to say. Maybe some of you have seen the interview after the game on the official stream, so if you have any knowledge of this, please do share in the comments. The reason is, after queen captures on c8 and king to h7, okay, your queen is attacked and your bishop on e3 is still attacked. Okay, now you would have to find that queen captures on c5 is the strongest move. Or rather, you don't really have to find the strongest continuation, but let's just see why queen captures on c5 is the strongest continuation. Now, after black captures the bishop, now you have rook captures on g4 and black falls apart. F captures on g4 and bishop to d3 check, and black is getting checkmated. King to g8, now rook to d8 with check, bishop blocks, now queen picks up the knight with check, queen blocks, now bishop to c4 check, king to h7, queen to h5 check, queen to h6, now rook to d7 check, bishop blocks, now bishop to d3 check, the queen is pinned, king has to move, king g8, and now queen to f7, this is checkmate, the bishop is covering the h7 square. So although this is a 10 move variation, it's, I mean, this is not nearly what Aronian couldn't calculate. This is something he calculates like for breakfast. But the reason he didn't find it is a pretty weird one, especially because after this queen captures on c8 check and king to h7, even if you don't consider queen captures on c5, again you can find queen to d7, which is a lot simpler move, but again results in a nice win for white. Because now again, if you capture the bishop, now again rook captures on g4 is completely crushing. With the idea that, of course, you don't you can't capture the rook, because then bishop to d3 again is winning, and if you try to capture the queen with the idea that rook will capture queen, not really. First, you have this in-between move, rook captures on h4. You can't block with the bishop as both rooks are eyeing the h6 square. You have to move the king. Now simply you capture the rook, king captures, rook captures on d7, and you are up a whole rook. With a completely winning position. But after this rook to d6 and queen to f7, Aronian didn't capture the bishop. He played queen to d8, and Grishuk immediately played queen to f8 like he was expecting it. Because Aronian here, it took Aronian some, I think it was around 15, maybe even more minutes to decide what to do here, and he played this. Grishuk immediately responded queen to f6, queen to f8, and now black defends. Here, bishop captures on f4, simply removing that threat of the bishop being attacked on e3 the entire game. Knight to e6, attacking Aronian's queen. Bishop to c4, pinning the knight, but now simply queen captures on d8. Rook captures and king to h7, unpinning. We have captures, bishop to d6, now knight to g5, trying to activate those knights. Rook to g2, and now knight to e5. And if you look at this position, Grishuk is up 2 pawns, Aronian is up the exchange, but neither side can really make any progress here. Bishop to b8 was played, going for that a7 pawn. Now bishop to d4, h3 kicking away the knight, knight to e5 attacking the bishop, bishop to d5, we have knight to d3 check, king to e2, knight to c1 check, king to d1, and now knight back to d3. Here, knight to d2, we have knight back to f6, attacking the bishop on d5, bishop to f3, and here the players agreed to a draw. So a very interesting game, and another draw that was extremely fierce. You know, the entire game was very very hard to calculate, and Grishuk spent almost all of his time all the way to like maybe a couple of moves before the end game. And maybe it's due to the fact that he missed that bishop to h4 yesterday. Maybe he just was trying to be more careful against Aronen, but who knows. Here they agreed to a draw. Knight captures on b2. Check doesn't give black anything. White simply moves the king, and after, let's say, c4, white can always capture on a7, as now the bishop has to capture, and now you capture the knight. Again, I mean, they just trade a couple of pieces. Again, it's a drawn endgame. So yeah, after bishop to f3, a draw was agreed upon, and you know, that was basically my question. What did you think about those variations? Were they simply too hard to see for a couple of 2800 players? Were they like strictly engine variations, or maybe you think that there was some other reason they didn't consider them? I don't know. To me, all of these variations don't seem like too big of a problem for either Arunan or Grishuk to calculate. So it could be like anything, you know, maybe another case of double blindness, but who can tell? But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Once again, I would like to thank Nikki for sending those photos so quickly right after this game. All the links to her social media will be in the description below. Feel free to follow her for more chess photos. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with probably another game from the candidates, but we'll see. Maybe even I'll continue my Talbot Munich series. Thank you all, and I will see you soon. Hello everyone, and welcome to a truly remarkable game from the Greek Team Championship. It comes as a suggestion from a user named Nick TT, so thank you for that. And it's Athanasios Mastravasilis versus Mochil Nikolov. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I did not have all that much practice with Greek names, but the game itself, it's simply phenomenal. So hope you guys enjoyed this. It will, well, improve your Saturday at least tenfold. So let's check it out. White with the white pieces opens with d4. We have knight to f6, c4, we have e6 and g3. Sorry about that. White goes for the Catalan opening, preparing to fianchetto his light square bishop. And here, still the most common reply is d5. But black strikes in the center right away with c5, also very popular, just not as popular as d5 yet, maybe. White advances the pawn to d5, because this is now how the chess is played nowadays. You do not miss up an opportunity to grab more space. E captures on d5, c captures, and now d6. And we have knight to c3, continuing development, g6 now preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop, and bishop to g2. We have bishop to g7 and knight to f3, and we basically transposed into the Benoni defense. And here, black just castles. So this is nothing new. This has been played many times. There are like 4,000 games just in top tier tournaments with this exact same position. So we have castles by white as well, and rook to e8. And now the usual way white will play this is to go knight to d2. It's very standard. You want to bring this knight to c4, put pressure on the d6 pawn, play bishop f4, put more pressure on this pawn, and black will at some point probably will even have to defend it with bishop to f8. So there are many lines here. Of course, you guys know all of that. And also just the immediate bishop to f4, putting pressure on the pawn right away. But here we have rook to e1. It's a very rare move, and it's one that, as you'll see, white prepared very nicely. So here a6, black of course wants to go for the usual b5. White stops this, plays a4, now controls b5, and knight b to d7. And now bishop to f4, attacking the pawn here, and now knight to h5, going after the bishop and saying you are more than welcome to grab my d6 pawn. But this is still all very known theory. If bishop captures on d6, we can play queen b6, attack the bishop and the pawn here, and now it's very hard to get out of this. If you just move the bishop, we're gonna capture it, mess up your pawn structure here in front of your king, and still capture on b2. So that's pretty bad. We're gonna have to go into something like g4, queen captures, pawn captures, and then after g captures, we're gonna have a very sharp game with both kings wide open like this. But in the game, we have bishop to g5, another known idea, attacking the queen on d8, queen to c7, sidestepping this attack, and now white grabs more space with e4. We have rook to b8, trying to go for that b5 move, and now you could go for something like a5. It's it's a standard idea in such positions where if black plays b5, you want to capture a captures on b6 en passant, and then leave black with a weak a6 pawn. But in the game, we have g4 challenging this knight, and now what can black play? Well, you have to bring the knight back. There's really nothing else. Knight to f6, and then now comes h3, and this h3 is a new move in the game. The position has been reached before, for example, in the Women's World Team Championship between Tan Zhongyi and Tateva Barhamyan, where the immediate e5 was played. However, I think White was aware of this game, and he decided to not go for this, because in that game, d captures on e5 was played. But if black wants, black could go for the sharpest knight captures on g4, and then, for example, e6, knight to f8, or rather knight d to f6, and black is holding this, doesn't seem to be having all that much problems. So this is why I think White decided to avoid the immediate e5 and play h3, first defending the g4 pawn, and next he's gonna play e5. So this is a new move, even though I took the game from the Leech's database. The Leech's database states that b5 from black is actually a new move, but I only use a free database, so maybe this game that had this particular move was not in my free database, so it's possible. I'm still going to call the h3 the completely new game, but like I said, it's possible that it's b5. So okay, a captures on b5, we have a captures on b5, and only now e5. So the difference between that and the game that we discussed is that now the g6 pawn is protected, so you can play knight captures on g4, and also we captured once on b5, so some future rook lifting might be possible. So those are some of the differences. So d captures on e5, and now of course the e5 pawn is defended 3 times. We remove one of the defenders, we play d6, challenge the queen, queen to b6, and now we play bishop captures on f6. This is the tricky move, because now if you capture with the knight, then you no longer defend the pawn, then we can take the pawn as well. So bishop captures on f6 was played, and now g5, also a very important move. Everything White played here is played to such perfection that it's just enjoyable to just watch. So bishop back to g7, and now knight to d5, attacking the queen. You have a very nice outpost for the knight on e7, and also potential in some lines even on f6. So queen to d8, and now you don't go for knight to e7 right away, because if knight e7 check, black will happily give up the rook for the knight and this incredibly strong pawn. So first White played rook to a7, so utilizing both of the differences from the game that we've discussed, the rook is now allowed to go for this beautiful rook lift, putting pressure on the entire 7th rank. So here black should play something like rook to b7, and then it's unclear what White had in mind here. Maybe capturing, maybe just rook a8, and then maybe rook b8, and then we see a repetition. Who knows? I'm sure of course he had something in mind, because these are two very strong grandmasters. But in the game, bishop to b7 was played, and this allows White to continue his happy attack. So knight to e7 with check, but now with the difference that if you capture this now and try to give up the exchange like this, now knight to h2 is super annoying, attacking the bishop twice, and also if the bishop moves, there is a double attack on this knight. So you could even play queen g5, pin the bishop here, but we simply capture on b7, and after rook captures h4, and the queen can no longer keep pinning the bishop. Once the queen moves, we're just going to pick up the rook on b7. So White would be, well, close to winning here, if not winning. But okay, after knight to e7 check, king to f8, and now comes knight to h4. Another brilliant move. This is, setting up like it was a Tal game. And now the question is, can you capture on g2 now? Yes, you could. If you capture on g2, we're going to capture back. And now, how do you find a move here for black? It's very unclear. Is there even a good move here for black? For example, if you try to trade rooks, we're just going to play rook to c7. And what can you play? Knight to b6. We're going to play knight to c6. Challenge the queen. And now, again, no good moves for the black queen. If queen g5, we're going to play d7. And this is, again, now just winning for white. It's too overwhelming a position to hold for black. So after this knight to h4 move, black played queen to b6 right away. It's the absolute best reply. He goes after the rook here. But now white has this beautiful rook captures on b7. So, of course, you can't capture back with the queen. You have to capture with the bishop. And now we have queen to d5 with a double attack on the rook here. So what do you play here? Well, this is the crucial position, and black should have played something like rook e to b8, and still black's position would be very difficult difficult here. White is just mounting a beautiful attack, but black played rook to a7 here, and this is what makes our move, or rather a series of moves, possible. Feel free to pause the video here and try to find the winning idea for white. It's actually a forced checkmate in 4, so while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on figuring out what the position is all about. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is of course queen captures on f7 with check. We start off with a queen sacrifice, even though you don't have to. You could actually start by capturing the g6 pawn. For example, knight captures on g6, h captures on g6, and then the same idea applies. Queen captures on f7, king captures, bishop d5 check, king to f8, and now knight to g6 will be checkmate, as everything is nicely covered here and you cannot block anything. Of course, the check with the knight cannot be blocked, it can just be avoided. Instead, after rook to a7, queen captures on f7 was played right away, and this is a good thing to remember. If you can deliver mate in 4 with a queen sacrifice, if you start with a queen sacrifice, it's much better to do it than, you know, start with something else and then sacrifice the queen. It's just, you know, much flashier and more people will see it and remember it. So here queen captures on f7. It's also a fine position for any book on tactics, or, you know, if they still make those, you know, just see the power of the two knights, and this knight stage for setting this up is just amazing. So there's only one reply, king captures on f7, and now the same idea, bishop d5 check, king to f8, and now knight e captures on g6 with check. Black's only move is to capture back, and after captures, knight to g6 delivers checkmate. Incredible stuff here. I have to, you know, draw some arrows and make some colors red to use for the thumbnail. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, thank you a lot and very much, Nick T, for suggesting such a wonderful game. And also, it was the perfect moment to show it, as we have a rest day in the US Chess Championship today. I would like to thank Tom Deralo, Nicolas Taxidis, David Kimura, John Cousins, and Prashant Rawat for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the US Chess Championship, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, hopefully as nice as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Saturday. Hello everyone, and welcome to a very nice game that comes as a suggestion from Luke Meyer. Thank you for such a nice suggestion. It's a game from the Soviet Team Championship, the 7th Soviet Team Championship. It was played in 1960, and it was played in October, so of course Tigran, former world champion Tigran Petrosyan, was not a world champion yet. This, like I said, was played in October, and in May we had the Tal versus Botvinnik match, so of course you guys know who the world champion was at the time this game was played. But still, Petrosyan, definitely a formidable opponent for anyone. And Livonay, we've mentioned him on the channel. If you guys remember, during the Bobby Fischer saga, he was one of Boris Spassky's seconds during his 1972 match against Bobby Fischer, alongside Nikolai Krogius and Effin Geller. He also helped out, but there were the three of them were like steady seconds, but he also had help from other players like Karpov himself and so on. But okay, getting back to this game, it was suggested as it features a wonderful queen sacrifice that happens, I believe not because Tigran misses it, but because he's hoping that Livonay will miss it, as it is the only chance to save the game. So let's check it out and see, as it features a very exciting opening also. So here we have d4 by Livo, knight to f6, c4, and c5, going for the Benoni defense, and we have d5, and now well, nowadays b5, the Benko gambit, and the e6, the so-called modern line, are what you will pretty much see every time. But here we have e5. Okay, this is also quite popular, but not nearly as popular as the 2 lines that we've mentioned. It is the Czech variation of the Benoni, and it is very, very different in terms of playing style. Not as crazy, and Tigran, well, he really likes safe positions. Not that you would play this if you enjoy safe positions, but it's much safer than those. I believe he maybe underestimated Livonay a little bit, as he was only an international master at the time this game was played. So who knows what made him go for this opening choice. But okay, knight to c3, we have d6, and now pawn to e4, and here g6, just preparing to fianchetto the bishop. It's not maybe the safest approach for black, but it's more of something that you would use if you were really an attacking player. For example, Judith Polgar used this to defeat Etienne Bacrot in 1999. So you know, it would be an interesting choice if you are, you know, an attacking player. But so I think it's very interesting that Tigran uses this. We have f3 and knight b to d7, and it is now as of move 6 that this position has never been repeated again. We have bishop to e3 and now pawn to a6. We have knight to h3, shifting the knight over to f2, and now rook to b8, preparing to strike on the queen side with b5. We have a4 guarding the b5 square, and now just bishop to g7. We have queen to d2, preparing to trade off the dark square bishops, and now just queen to a5. And here we have knight to f2. You could also play g4 here. Positionally, this would be better as black wants to put this knight on h5. So you should prevent this and then continue with your plan of knight to f2. But okay, knight to f2, knight to h5 now by Tigran, and rook to a3. Now the rook will be it can be shifted over to the king side if the position opens up. Also, you can put the rook to b3 if needed. We have castles, and now knight to d3. And here we have bishop to f6. You could also strike right away with f5, but Tigran, being Tigran, he just remaneuvers the bishop over to e7. This will make the position a bit safer, and then he's going to strike with f5. So here, bishop to e2, nicely continuing development, bishop to e7, and now finally we have castles king side. Pawn to f5, striking here against the center, and now e captures on f5. G captures on f5, and now pawn to f4, really weakening Tigran's center, as he does control a lot of central squares here. Knight to g7, and now f captures on e5, d captures on e5, and now bishop to h6. So winning a lot of space here. Queen back to c7, the queen helping out with the defense. You have to remaneuver the queen to the center of the board, and now g4, opening up the position. F captures on g4, and now we have rook captures on f8. You could also postpone trading just knight to e4 maybe first, but okay, rook captures, we have knight captures, and now knight to e4, putting pressure on this d6 square. So for the moment, the knight is blocking your queen, but the knight will move, and then Tigran will have to really worry about this d6 push. So bishop to f5, and now knight d to f2, defending the knight, but also now putting pressure on that d6 square. So knight to e8, guarding this square, and now comes bishop captures on g4, just grabbing a pawn here, bishop to g6, and now rook to g3. So you can see that with all of these pieces in front of the black king, with the queen having access to the king side, it is very, very unlikely that Tigran will save the game here, but he is the one of the greatest masters of defense that ever played, so anything is possible. King to h8, moving the king away from the g file. Now comes bishop to g5, just offering a trade, trying to activate the queen. Knight to d6, attacking this knight, and now knight captures on d6. And now if you capture with the knight, then you allow bishop to f6 check, maybe giving white a bit too much. So instead we have queen captures on d6, bishop captures on e7, queen captures, and now grabbing more space with pawn to d6. This pawn is also a pass pawn, so promotion is very close. We have queen to f6, and now queen to d5. Rook to f3 was a way to really improve the game a bit further, but now if Tigran plays it well, he could even defend this position. But he misses it. The idea is that, for example, if you play rook to d8, now it's very hard for white to defend, because how do you defend this pawn? Of course, rook to f3 saves the pawn. You're going to move the queen, and now you're going to play queen captures on c5, and the game continues. Maybe black can survive this. e4, you have a nice pass pawn that's defended on e4. You're attacking the rook. The queen can enter the game. So it's possible. Let's say rook to b3, you would put pressure on the b7 pawn. White will always be better, but this this was the best way to save the game. Tigran probably decided that this pawn will be a weakness at some point, and he pushes it to b6, also helps out with the defense of the c5 pawn. And now if white doesn't have an instant win, then he can play rook to d8 next. However, knight to d3. And that's a problem. How do you counter this move? If you just eliminate the knight, for example, bishop captures, then something terrible happens. But I don't want to spoil it because that's the exact thing that happened in the game already. Tigran played rook to d8, and now comes pawn to d7. Interestingly, this is the only move that wins the game for white, because if you don't do this, then the pawn will just fall, and there is no better move you can make. So pawn to d7, and now finally we have bishop captures on d3. Whatever Tigran plays here, his position is completely lost, but by playing bishop captures on d3, he allows Livonate to end the game in great style. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this spectacular idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the symmetry. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to g8. We can also do it in slow motion because it's beautiful. There we have it, queen to g8 with check. And there is no other move that black can make other than king captures. But of course, when Tigran saw this, it was in this position on move 33 that he resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So I don't think Tigran missed it. I think that as there's no other way to play this, that he just decided that it was maybe the best chance, or maybe he even missed it. I mean, crazier things have happened in chess, like, you know, people just missing mate in one or stuff like that. But yeah, here of course you resign, as after king captures and bishop to e6, this is now a double check, and there is only one square for the king, king to h8, and now rook to g8 will be checkmate. So, of course, after this queen to g8 check move, Tigran resigned, and a wonderful victory by Livonate against the future world champion Tigran Petrosyan, who will win the title in some 3 years after this game was played. So yeah, really crazy stuff. Not in 3 years. This was in 1960. Tigran won in 67, I believe. But I can also check. I don't want to trick you guys. Let me just check real quickly. Let me just check real quickly. Oh no, from 1963 to 1969. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Tal won in 1960, then Botvinnik won it back, and then in 1963, of course, Petrosyan won it from Botvinnik, who had it for like the third time. He first lost it to Tal, then he lost it to Smyslov, and then he finally lost it to Petrosyan. I've been covering too many modern games. I have to brush up on my chess history, it would seem. But yeah, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we do have some news regarding the World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Yanni Pomnishi. It seems that FIDE never gave Carlsen the deadline that he has to give his reply until the 20th of this month of July. That isn't really the case, that he can take more time, as they have to present some other things as well. But it seems that Magnus will not play unless they change the format. So if FIDE suggests that Magnus should play in the exact same format that they've been using so far, it would seem that Magnus will not play. But these are all just news going around. It doesn't necessarily make it true. So as soon as I know something real, once we have something tangible, I will of course inform you guys. So yeah, once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Brilliant victory by international master Livonate against future world champion Tigran Petrosyan. Very nicely done. I would like to thank Babur Nugmanov, Mago Pink, Alessandro Rigobello, Paul Hinamund, and Alan Labrish for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the of your suggestions, basically, as this was also a suggestion, and checking up on whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. Hello everyone and welcome to another game from the Superbet Rapid and Blitz tournament being played in Poland 2023. It is Wesley So versus Richard Rapport, and this is their game from round 3. Now, one of these gentlemen is one of the leaders after day 1, but we are going to discuss this after the game. And also thank you everyone who mentioned in the comments of the previous video that I forgot to update the letter on the little robot below me. Sometimes it happens, but it's good to know that people pay attention to that kind of stuff. So that being said, let's check out the game. I went through all of the games that happened, and I thought you guys would enjoy this one the most. It's a real slugfest. So let's dive straight into it. There we go. Sorry about that. Let me just fix the board. Okay. So Wesley has the white pieces, and he opens with pawn to d4. We have knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, and pawn to c5. So a bit of a different move order, but we will end up in a Benoni very quickly. d5, d6, we have knight to c3, e captures on d5, and we have transposed into the Benoni defense. C captures on d5, g6, and now bishop to f4. Now, this is a move that often troubled me when I first started playing chess, as Benoni was one of the openings that I started employing as black against pawn to d4, because I've started watching some Mikhail Tal games where he played the Benoni, and of course he played very well, so I thought maybe I could play fun chess like that. But after bishop to f4, it always seemed like, okay, now if I play bishop to g7, won't this d6 pawn just be a weakness forever? But the fact of the matter is, no, it won't. So just bishop to g7, and now pawn to e3. Knight to b5 doesn't do anything, because just queen to a5 check, and of course that's pretty pointless. You have to go back, and then your entire position just falls apart. And even if e3 was played, the knight on b5 was defended, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So e3, we have castles, and now you might think, well, can't we do it just now? What is knight b5? We just go after the pawn, and how can black defend it? I mean, is black going to play a weird move like knight to e8? No, black will actually play something like pawn to a6, and that's it. Capturing the pawn is really bad for white. If knight captures on d6, you will play knight to h5, go after the bishop, who is defending the knight here, and after knight captures on c8, knight captures on f4, e captures on f4, bishop captures on b2, black's position is just better. Let's say rook b1, bishop c3 check. Okay, you will castle at some point with bishop to e2 and castles, but let's say knight to d7, you will capture on c8 with the rook, and after bishop to e2, rook captures on c8, let's say castles, and now knight to f6, you will also lose the d5 pawn, and only black can be better here. So that's why just pawn to h3, if some of you were wondering. And now here's a move that isn't played all that often. Usually black just goes knight to a6 to c7, and it does make sense, because one thing that the bishop on f4 does is prevents knight to d7 to e5 in some variations. Of course, this knight has to move for you to go to e5 with this knight, but if you play knight d7, then bishop captures on d6. That's one of the problems, and this can be solved in many different ways, but Ricci decides to go for knight to e8, and now the pawn is defended, and now you can play knight to d7 to e5. So let's see what happens here. Bishop to e2, knight to d7, we have castles, and just knight to e5. We have knight to d2, also one of the ideas when playing against the Benoni is just put the knight on c4. The knight will be extremely strong there, going after the d6 pawn, and it's sort of one of the objectives that you should achieve. We have pawn to f5, and now there is a game where bishop to g3 was played. Also knight to c4 is a known move, but Wesley goes bishop back to h2 first, and it is now, as of move 13, that we have a completely new game. So we have knight to c7 and pawn to a4, now controlling the b5 square. You don't want to see pawn to b5 on the board. We have queen to e7, and now rook to e1. We have queen to b3, bishop to d7, queen to b3, and now knight to a6. Rapport now offers the b7 pawn, and as this is a rapid game, he maybe feels that Wesley will not be able to capture it, because what if your queen gets trapped? But that's exactly what Wesley plays. Queen captures on b7, and he says, show me the danger behind capturing this pawn. And okay, Rapport plays knight to b4. Now he is threatening rook f to b8, but Wesley plays bishop captures on e5. And now the problem is, if you go for rook f to b8, there's a very tricky line here. bishop captures on d6. And now after queen captures, knight to c4. And now if you move the queen, then queen can just go to c7, so you can just trade. Let's say rook captures, knight captures, now attacks the rook. And if rook to b6 attacking the knight, you will just play knight back to c4, attack the rook. Now let's say knight to c2, forking both of the rooks, but now just rook e to d1. And after knight captures, you will capture on b6, a captures, rook captures, and white will be much better here. You are up 2 pawns, and of course, well, it's hard to say if you are winning by force, but you should be much better here. So instead, after bishop captures on e5, Rapor just recaptures, bishop captures on e5, and now bishop to b5. You've removed the defender of the bishop on d7, so now you want to go after it. We have rook f to d8 defending, and now rook e to d1, sidestepping the fork, rook a to b8, and now queen to c7. We have rook b to c8, attacking the queen, queen b7, rook b8, queen d7, and rook b to c8. And now Rapport is saying, oh, all right, are you maybe interested in a draw, good Sir Wesley? But no, queen back to a5. Wesley wants to continue fighting. We have pawn to a6, attacking the bishop, and now we trade captures, captures, and knight to c4, putting pressure on that d6 pawn. We have rook to b8, now stopping knight to b6, and knight to a2, offering a trade. And while you could just trade here, Richard goes for rook to a7. He defends the pawn, so now if the knight is captured, you don't have to worry about queen captures on a6. We have knight captures on b4, rook captures on b4, and now just knight captures on e5, trading everything off. Queen captures on e5, and queen to d8 with check. We have king to g7, and rook to d2. Now defending the pawn on b2, and okay, the pawn on b2 is attacked twice, but if you capture on b2, then rook captures, queen captures, attacks the queen, and once the rook moves, you could play this, but it maybe trades down a bit too much. So instead, rook a to b7 was played, just doubling up on the b file, and now queen to a8, going after the a6 pawn. Rook captures on b2, we have rook captures, queen captures, queen captures, attacking the rook on a1, and now just rook back to f1. And now, not defending on a6 with queen to b6, Rapport says, I'm going to start pushing my pawn right away. You can have the a6 pawn. So he sacrifices it. He plays pawn to c4. Queen captures on a6, pawn to c3. We have king to h2, getting the king off of the back rank. Usually it makes sense when someone is trying to promote a pawn to a queen. Pawn to c2, and now queen to c4. Of course, you have to guard the queening square, and now Rapport just plays rook to b4. He's trying to kick the white queen away from the defense of the c1 square. Queen to c7 with check, king to h6, and now a beautiful move, queen captures on d6. Sort of offering Richard to go for pawn to c1, but if you do this, then rook captures on c1, queen captures, and queen captures on b4, and white is just winning. So instead, we have rook to c4, now preparing pawn to c1, but Wesley just plays queen to f8 check, king to h5, and queen to e7. And now you have to repeat king to h6, and we end the game with a repetition. For example, king h5, queen to e7, and here we would have a nice repetition. The problem is, in the game, a pawn to h6 was played, and this is bad. And another thing, let's say you play pawn to c1 and just to bring a queen into the game. Look at this, rook captures, queen captures on c1, and now queen captures on h7 with check, king to g5, and now pawn to d6, and white just wins on the spot. The problem is, you'd think that white is trying to promote the pawn here because the rook cannot get access to the d4 square, but even if you play rook to c8 and you stop the pawn, there's the beautiful f4 check, and now after king to f6, you see the real reason behind pawn to d6. That, of course, is queen to e7 checkmate. So that's the problem. So that's why the only move to play here is pawn to h6, but Rapport plays an even worse move, and he plays pawn to h6 now, instead of king to h6, and now Wesley has a forced checkmate, and it's really a beautiful one. It's a forced mate in 7 moves, not an easy one to spot. Just a heads up, Wesley did not find it during the game because they were both incredibly low on time, but you guys, I imagine, are very comfortable in your own homes, enjoying some chess, so feel free to pause the video and try to find this beautiful forced mate in 7 while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this elusive idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to g4 with check. It looks odd, you know, starting. How would Wesley miss this? It's literally a check move. The problem is after f captures on g4, you don't recapture. You play king g3, and now there's the threat of queen to h4 checkmate, and the black pawn is preventing the rook from guarding the h4 square. So what happens now? Queen to b8 with check. Now you play pawn to d6. Absolutely incredible. And after g captures on h3, so the rook finally regains access to the h4 square, you play pawn to f4. Again, with the threat of queen to h4 checkmate, and now it's unstoppable. The only way to stop it is g5, but then queen to f7 is just checkmate. So absolutely incredible stuff. Wesley had no time to find it, but I hope you guys did a good job. So instead, he played pawn to d6. He started advancing his passed pawn, but this allows the Rapport a chance to bounce back. So so pawn to c1 becomes a queen. Rook captures on c1, rook captures, and now pawn to g4 with check. We have captures with check, king captures, and queen to e4 with check. And now Wesley is down a full rook, but that pawn is very, very close to promotion. King to g5, queen to f4 with check, king to h5, and now pawn to d7. Actually, the way to win this is queen to f3 check, and I'm just going to show it because it's beautiful. Queen to f3 check, king to g5, and now king to h3. That's the way to do it, threatening queen f4 check, queen to h4 checkmate, and now after, let's say, queen to e5, stopping this, you just play d7. And there's no avoiding it now. If queen to e6 check, yes, you connect with the pawn, but just king g3. You're again threatening checkmate. There's no good way to stop this. And if you try repeating queen to e5 with check, there's even the incredible queen to f4 with check. And now after queen captures, pawn captures with check. So you will promote that pawn. You are within tempo. King to f6, and now d8 queen. And of course, white completely winning. But incredible stuff. They were playing on increment. They were a few only seconds on the clock. So d7 by Wesley, queen to d2, and now queen to f3 with check. King g5, queen to f4 check, king to h5, queen to e5 with check, pawn to g5, and now queen to e8 with check. Wesley now has his d8 square protected. King to h4, and now queen to e4 with check. The real move is queen to f8, as we've shown in the thumbnail, because from there you guard the queening square, you guard the f2 pawn, so you don't have to worry about queen captures on f2, and you're also threatening queen captures on h4 with check, followed by queen to h3 checkmate. So, I mean, queen to e4 check was played. Wesley repeats once, queen to h5, queen to e8 with check, king to h4, and now Wesley spots it. Queen to f8. Absolutely beautiful. There's just no defense against this. So rook to h1 was played. The problem is if you capture the pawn, of course, just queen captures on h6 check, king g4, and queen to h3. This wonderful checkmate. After queen to f8, rook to h1 check. Of course, Richard now has to give back the rook in order to avoid checkmate. Queen captures on d7, getting rid of the pawn, but now queen captures on h6 with check, king to g4, and queen to a6. Defending the pawn on a4, and now you're up 2 pawns in a queen and pawn endgame. Of course, you know you're winning. It's merely a matter of are you able to win it. So king to f3, queen to f6 with check, king e2, and now king to h2. You have to win the g5 pawn and start advancing your pawns without allowing black some sort of a weird drawing maneuver. So here, queen to g4 is actually still a draw, but a queen to h7 check was played. King to g2, now queen e4 check, pawn to f3. We have queen captures on a4 and just queen captures on g5. So now the two connected pass pawns will march forward. Queen a2, now comes pawn to e4. We have queen to b3, queen to g3, and queen to e6. We have pawn to e5. The pawns are now unstoppable. King e3, pawn to f4 with check. King d4, queen to f2 with check. King e4, queen f3 with check. King d4, queen g6. Queen to f5, and now queen to d1 again with check. King e4, queen f3 check, king to d4, king to g3, queen to g6 check, and queen to g4. You have to figure out a safe way to get your king off the board. Queen d3 check, queen f3. A couple of repetitions here, then king h4, queen h7, and now queen to h5. Queen e7 check, you run away, and now queen to f5.
Another queen g8 check, queen g5, queen to e6 check, f5 now, and this is the way to advance. Otherwise, you would just have a repetition, but here the problem is if the pawn is captured, then queen to f4 check forces a queen trade, and after captures and captures, the pawn will be protected all the way to the queening square. Let's say king to g6, king e7, king to g7, and the 3 squares needed to promote your pawn are defended, of course, completely winning. So after f5, we have queen to a2, but now just queen to f4 check, king to d5, and king to g5. The white king now marches up the board, queen to b2, f6, queen to g2, king to h6, and he was in this position on move 86 that Richard Rapport resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The one way the game could continue is, of course, a few more checks would be given. Let's say queen g2, queen g5, queen c2 check, king g7, queen c7 check, f7, and that's it. And now after you try anything, even a nice queen to d6 check will be enough for you to win the game, because you have to trade, and then of course the queen is completely winning. So yeah, really a remarkable game. As expected, Rapport always plays wild openings, and Wesley does not back out from a challenge. He did grab that b7 pawn. He said, "All right, show me the true secrets of the position," but there weren't really any, and Wesley just won a very nice game. And if you guys are interested in the standings after first 3 days of the Superbet Rapid tournament, Wesley, Levon, and Young Krzysztof Duda are leading the tournament with 5 points. Then with 4 points, Maxim Vasilyev-Lagrave and Radoslav Wojtaszek. With 3 points, Richard Rapport. With 2 points, World Rapid Champion Magnus Carlsen. With 1 point, Anish Giri and Kirill Shevchenko. And with 0 points so far, Bogdan Daniel Deak. So there we have it. A very nice game. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see more incredible games being played today. 3 more rounds of Rapid will be played. I would like to thank David Kimura, AMD Reason Enthusiast Group, GolfSoftware.com, Paul Hinamund, and Gary Shaw for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event and everything else that's happening in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament. It's round 22, so the penultimate round. It's Svetozar Gligoric versus Bobby Fischer. Now, it's been a wild tournament so far, only 2 more rounds to go, and after, having a couple of winning streaks and a couple of tough breaks, Fischer is now again on a winning streak. He defeated 5 of his previous opponents, and now he faces the strongest Yugoslavian Grandmaster, Svetozar Gligoric, which will be definitely a very interesting game too, as again Fischer will go for the Benoni. But before we head into that, we do have a nice photo challenge, so best of luck to everyone. Who is the person, the chess player in the photo here? There you have it. It's a very nice photo by David Lada. And she did say on her Twitter profile that this photo made her realize that she is taking her chess tournaments way too seriously. And in addition, you will get extra points if you figure out why she is in the photo challenge today. I will give you a little hint. It is due to her recent achievement. So there you have it. Now let's check out this game. Gligoric opens with d4. We have knight to f6, c4, e6. So far an Indian game, knight to c3, and now again Fischer goes for the Benoni defense. d5, this is the standard idea, advancing the d pawn, captures, and d6, knight to f3, g6, e4, bishop to g7, bishop to e2, and Fischer castles. Gligoric castles, and rook to e8, attacking the e4 pawn. And here we have knight to d2, a standard idea, and now both of the knights are guarding the e4 pawn. Knight b to d7, preparing to bring the knight into the center via knight e5. a4, always a useful move against the Benoni to prevent any future expansions on the queen side. Knight to e5, and this knight to e5 move is always very interesting if you're a Benoni player, because of course you have to wonder, can white push f4? If white can push f4, then there's no good reason to actually play knight e5. But here, and it's a pretty standard position for the Benoni, so you should probably know that it's okay to play knight to e5, because if you push f4 here, then knight to g4 will be a very nice move for black. You're threatening knight to e3 to fork the queen and the rook. Also, The bishop is not defending the e3 square as there is a knight on d2, and you can't play something like knight to c4 because you have to keep protecting the e4 pawn as it is attacked twice. So you would have to capture here, and after knight captures, again you're threatening the same idea. Okay, now white can go something like knight f3, but then black can go f5, and black achieves pretty much everything black hopes for when playing the Benoni defense. After captures, it's a wonderful position to play for black. So after knight to e5, we have queen to c2. Gligoric adds additional protection to the e4 pawn, and now f4 will definitely be an idea. So Fischer stops it. g5. A peculiar move, but it seems to be working in this position. Knight to f3. Fischer captures, knight captures on f3, bishop captures on f3, and now h6. A bold expansion on the queen side from Fischer, saying that this is perfectly fine. Bishop to d2, simply continuing development, a6, and now bishop back to e2. We have queen to e7, rook 8 to e1, indirectly defending the e4 pawn, because now if you capture, the knight captures, you will get queen captures, and then bishop to d3 attacks the queen, guards the h7 square, and there's nothing black can do here. If you capture, you lose the queen. It's game over. If you move the queen, let's say queen here, you get rook captures. The h7 square is not available. Completely winning position for white. So after rook a to e1, queen to e5, now Fischer is ready to counter f4 with queen to d4 check, so getting out of the way with tempo. We have king to h1, and now queen to d4. The queen has infiltrated white's position very nicely here, but it can also get very dangerous here. We have f3, adding further protection to the e4 pawn, and here knight to h5. A very nice idea by Fischer, preparing knight to f4, maybe even knight g3 in some variations, but this is definitely one of the critical moments of the game. Here, the queen is very nicely placed on d4, but it's also a very dangerous square for the queen, because here the best move would be knight to d1, threatening bishop to c3 to win Fischer's queen, as it would have no squares left to go to. But then bishop to d7, attacking the a4 pawn, so now bishop to c3 doesn't make all that much sense. Queen can simply capture on a4, but after b3 defending, then Fischer would simply go back, create some breathing space for the queen, and all would be well. But Gligoric, for some reason, thought that he can trap the queen here, or perhaps he didn't think that. Perhaps he simply thought that it was okay to give up 2 pieces for the rook. So he played knight to b5. A very nice idea. The queen is now under attack, and the same idea does not work here. Bishop to c3 will be a threat. The queen can be captured here. If you move the queen back, then knight to c7 forks the rooks, and you lose the game here. So what can you do here after Gligoric plays knight to b5? Well, Fischer simply took the knight. A captures on b5, and now bishop to c3 doesn't work right away because queen can now capture on a4. So first bishop captures on b5, and now bishop to c3 again becomes a threat, and of course the rook on e8 is undefended. So here, okay, if you capture here, then that really makes no sense. White will simply capture the undefended rook on e8. So Fischer moved the queen back. Queen e5. Now we have bishop to c3 attacking the queen. Queen does have a square now. Queen e7. And bishop captures on e8, grabbing the undefended rook. We have queen captures on e8, and now bishop captures on g7. King captures on g7, and now we have b4, trying to bust open here, but doesn't really give black all that much problems. C captures on b4 was played. Gligoric goes queen to b2 check. Queen e5. Fischer immediately offers a trade of queens. Queen captures on b4, and now knight to f4. Fischer is now threatening knight to d3. This would fork the queen and the rook, and of course win the game. So rook to d1. Gligoric prevents it, and now we have b6. Fischer offers the b6 pawn, so he can capture the a4 pawn, and this is the best thing for Gligoric in this position. For example, queen captures, rook captures, but it also contains a little trap, Fischer set for Gligoric, because now if Gligoric went for this and played queen to c6 with the idea that he will win a piece here, the rook cannot go back as the queen is also guarding the a8 square, then Fischer wins instantly with queen to b2. And there is no defense against queen captures on g2 checkmate. You can prolong it, for example, rook g1, but then comes bishop to h3, piling up on the g2 pawn. And after you capture the bishop, as there is no other move, then rook to a2 is coming, and now no piece can block queen captures on h2 checkmate. So a very nice idea, this b6 move by Fischer, trying to, you know, get Gligoric to capture, and then go queen c6. But probably in time trouble, Gligoric decides not to go for this, and perhaps he even saw this, but he didn't like the position even after just exchanging pawns. So here he played rook to f2. But unfortunately for Gligoric, rook to f2 is a losing move. So feel free to pause the video here and continue Bobby Fischer's legendary winning streak, and you know, get him a win, a sixth win in a row in the Palma de Mallorca 1970 Interzonal Tournament. I will give it a couple of seconds if you want to decide whether you want to do it or not. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you have just continued Bobby Fischer's legendary winning streak. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Fischer played knight to d3. Once you see it, it all becomes apparent. Now the queen and rook are forked. You will definitely lose at least the exchange here, because if you capture, then you get queen to a1 check, and the king has nowhere to go. And however you try and block this, you can see that no piece can guard the other piece, and vice versa. So after you give up all of your pieces, it will in the end be checkmate. So after knight to d3, Gligoric captured on b6. We have knight captures with check, queen captures, and now rook captures on a4. And this is now completely resignable. Gligoric is up a whole bishop. Fischer is up a whole bishop. Gligoric has a pawn for a piece. So you can easily resign the game here. But, you know, I guess it's better that, you know, history remembers this game, that you know, you lost to Bobby Fischer in 37 moves than in 30 moves, I guess. So king to g1, we have rook to a1. Fischer now wants to trade rooks. Queen to e1, preparing to capture the rook on a1. Rook to a2, and now queen to g3, offering a trade of queens. Fischer avoids it, although it's perfectly fine to capture it. Queen to b2, we have h4, and now simply rook to a1. And it was in this position on move 35 that Gligoric finally decided to resign the game. So yeah, that's round 22 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament. Yet another great victory for Bobby Fischer, although this game is way below Gligoric's skill level. First, you know, not going after that knight d1 move, rather he tried knight b5, and then either he blundered it, or he thought that maybe he could push for something with a rook against two pieces, and then in the end that rook move that blundered the exchange, again way below Gligoric's skill level. But yeah, it's a lot of authors and a lot of grandmasters said that Fischer won the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament by simply, you know, it's like he psychologically impacted his opponents, that they played poorly against him. But it is often, Mikhail Tal often said that, you know, fortune favors the strong, and it always seems that, you know, the stronger player is lucky. He's not lucky, he's just playing better every move, and then if you don't play as well as him every move, then you will lose the game, of course, at some point. But, you know, you should remember that fortune always favors the strong. So yeah, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it, and that you're enjoying the coverage of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament. So far, we have one more round to go, Fischer versus Pano, and that's it. I would like to thank Chris Buckland, Mario Murat, Jacques Bibma, Joseph Reeder, and Michael Acevedo for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are interested, today is the Boomsday Project, so later at some 7 p.m. Central European summertime, I will be opening some packs, and perhaps making a nice Hearthstone video, if any of you are interested in my Hearthstone channel as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I wanted to invite you, today is Yozaro's birthday, so I will put a link in the description below. It will be the first thing you will see. It's his latest video, so feel free to check it out and congratulate him, or rather wish him a happy birthday. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon. Hello everyone, and welcome to another very interesting game from round 3 of the United States 2018 Championship. Here we have a game between Jeffrey Xiong and Fabiano Caruana. Now, you already seen a couple of videos about Xiong on my channel. We had that one against Awandra Liang, I believe, and the one against Magnus Carlsen. And here he has the white pieces against the World Chess Championship challenger Fabiano Caruana. Jeffrey Xiong is the United States' third youngest grandmaster after Awandra Liang and Samuel Sevian. In 2016, he won the World Junior Chess Championship title, and also in 2016, he was the wild card in the United States Championship, where he won an excellent 6th place out of 12 contenders. That's amazing for a 16-year-old. And today, he's 18 years old, and only a month before the United States Championship, he won the very strong St. Louis Spring Classic with a rating performance of, I believe it's 2,819. So pretty unbelievable results, and here a true test of skill for him. He faces Fabiano Caruana. And finally a game where we don't see the French winner, but rather a nice Benoni. So let's see the game. d4 by Jeffrey and knight to f6. Knight to f3, e6, so a bit of a transposition into the Benoni. c4, c5, and now we do have d5. d6, knight to c3, e captures, c captures, and now g6. So the full Benoni modern variation. And here Jeffrey goes for bishop to f4. If you remember from my Tal Botvinnik series, in game 2 of their match, Botvinnik went for bishop to g5. And then later Tal, after he developed, played h6, g5, kicked the bishop all the way to g3, and then played knight to h5 and grabbed that bishop and opened Botvinnik's h-file. And after a long serious struggle, that game ended in a draw. Jeffrey, it seems, does not approve of Botvinnik's idea. He goes bishop to f4. Bishop to g7, now comes e3. We have castles, h3, and queen to e7. Knight to d2, preparing to transfer the knight, perhaps to c4. If allowed, then the d6 pawn could become seriously under attack. So Fabi immediately goes for the bishop. Knight to h5, bishop to h2. Now you can see how very useful the h3 move was, not only stopping any bishop to g4 ideas, but also making room for the bishop on h2. And now comes f5. So now knight to c4 will be met by simply removing the queen. We have bishop to e2, f4 now, and already on move 12 we have a very interesting position. What do you do here? Well, the problem with this obvious bishop captures on h5, I mean, why wouldn't you do it, is that Fabiano can simply play f captures on e3. And now your knight is under attack, your bishop is under attack, and black will definitely win back his piece. But what do you do here as black? Of course, if you capture, then pawn captures here, and then your bishop will still be under attack. And if you play f captures here, then you get bishop captures on c3, pawn captures, and now g captures on h5. And you're not gonna castle kingside, as the rook is controlling the f-file. You definitely don't want to go queenside. The queen side is all shattered. You can see this e3 pawn is very weak. The queen is attacking it. It's a very dangerous position for white, and in a practical game, white does not want to play this. So after f4, we have castles by Jeffrey, and Fabi goes f captures on e3. We have knight to d to e4, so a pawn sacrifice. We have e captures on f2, and now king to h1. Bishop captures on c3, and now again you don't have time for an in-between move with bishop captures here, because the knight on e4 is hanging, so you do have to capture this bishop with the knight. Knight captures, and now knight to g7, finally getting that knight away from h5, not allowing the bishop to capture it. And here there's this very annoying f2 pawn. Fabi pushed all the way to f2, and you have to get rid of it. But getting rid of it will give Fabi some very important tempos to activate his pieces and get back into the game. So bishop to f3, now the rook will be able to capture the pawn. Knight to d7, rook captures on f2, and knight to e5. So now the knight occupies an excellent central square. If white wants to eliminate it, he will have to give up his strong dark square bishop. Rook to e2, now pinning this knight, also with a double attack on it, and now knight to f5. And now if white plays a slow move, this knight is coming to d4, and then white's position will be very difficult to play. So Jeffrey doesn't allow this. He plays bishop captures on e5, we have d captures on e5, and d6. He decides to sacrifice a pawn here to activate his pieces as much as he can. So knight captures on d6. You can't go queen captures on d6, because then simply queen captures, knight captures, and white wins back the pawn on e5 with the rook. So this was the idea. Knight captures on d6. We have queen to d5. This comes with check. Knight to f7 now. Now the knight from f7 blocks check, and also there's a double defense of the e5 pawn. So Fabi still keeps his pawn. Knight to e4. Now going with a double attack on the c5 pawn, and there's no way to really defend the c5 pawn. So Jeffrey will win back the c pawn. The problem is, what do you play here as black? Well, if you play something like bishop to e6, as you see, you can't defend the c5 pawn. Maybe you just want to give it away. The problem is, after queen captures, and knight captures, now your b7 pawn is also gonna fall, and there's no real way to defend it. The knight and the bishop are attacking it. If you play b6, of course, you lose the rook here. So after knight to e4, Fabi simply played rook to b8, getting the rook out of this nasty a8 square, and this will allow him to push b6 when the queens come off the board. Queen captures on c5, queen captures, knight captures, and now the simple b6, which is now possible as the rook is no longer on a8. Knight to e4, and bishop to f5. So after all is said and done, Fabi is up a piece, and Fabi is up a pawn, and it's a very important and a very strong passed e-pawn. Knight to c3, rook b to d8, and we have a4 now. Jeffrey is hoping for a5 to mess up this very nice pawns on the queen side, but Fabi pushes a5 himself. We have bishop to d5, now pinning this knight, so now rook captures. And e5 is a threat, so rook f to e8, defending the e-pawn. Now comes bishop captures, king captures, and now rook to f1, with the threat of g4 to win the bishop on f5. King to e6, getting the king out of the way, and now rook to e1, threatening the e-pawn. And here Fabi repeats king to f6, we have rook to f1, and king back to e6. Rook f to e1, and now if Fabi would continue king to f6, we would have a draw by threefold repetition, but Fabi doesn't want this, so he plays king to d6. Rook to e3, we have king to c6, and now knight to b5. Rook to e7, now comes g4, and bishop to d3. Bishop to d3 with the idea of not allowing this rook to come to c3. Also with ideas that later this bishop is coming to c4 and the b3 to attack the a4 pawn. As the a4 pawn is on a light square, Fabi has a light square bishop. This is excellent for Fabi. Knight to c3. We have bishop to c4, now comes rook to c1, and king back to b7. Fabi doesn't want his king to occupy the same file as the rook. Rook to e4, attacks the bishop, now comes rook to d4, he offers the exchange of rooks, king g1, and now bishop to b3. With a double attack on the a4 pawn, so definitely now this would be very dangerous. King to f2, first rook to d2 check, rook blocks as now the b2 pawn was attacked, rook to f7 check, king to e3, and now rook back to d4, now again attacking the a4 pawn. Knight to b5, attacking the rook, rook goes all the way back. You have to be very careful, of course you don't want to play rook captures here, then simply knight to d6 check would win the rook on f7. So first you have to go back, now we have knight back to c3, and now rook to f4. And now there is no way to defend the a4 pawn anymore. Rook to d2, we have rook to d4 first, rook back to f2, and now finally bishop captures on a4. So now Fabi is up 2 pawns, and this is now pretty much unplayable. Rook to f6, still hoping for some ideas, maybe knight captures on a4 with rook to c6, maybe to create some perpetual ideas. But simply bishop to c6, and after bishop to c6, Jeffrey Xiong resigned the game. So a second victory in a row for Fabiano Caruana, which joins the lead in the United States Championship. And I'm still gonna wait a bit with the results and with the standings. Maybe after today's round, I will start showing them. Here, Jeffrey Xiong resigned because now there's really nothing to do. You're down 2 pawns. Uh, you could try something like rook captures, king captures, knight e2 check to win back the rook, but I mean, rook e7, the rook is coming. There's really no counterplay here, so it would only be torture. After bishop to c6, he resigned. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. And there is no one after this is round 3. There is no one with who is 3 out of 3. So unfortunately, no one will be winning the Fisher Award for winning the tournament with a perfect score. But such a thing in today's chess is really unthinkable. Maybe next year, who knows? So yeah, I would like to thank Nikolai Dobrev, John Roberts, and Emery Jiang for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with another interesting video, hopefully. Thank you all.
Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the Leipzig Olympiad of 1960. It is a game between Grandmaster Jonathan Penrose and world champion Mikhail Tal. This tournament was played in November, and Tal had his World Chess Championship match against Mikhail Botvinnik in March of 1960. So Tal already a world champion here. And for those who are wondering, is Jonathan Penrose in any way related to Sir Roger Penrose? Yes, that is definitely the case. Jonathan is his brother, and we've covered a game Jonathan played in 1950, I believe. I made a video on it 2 years ago, as Jonathan died in 2021. So if you haven't seen that game, do check it out. I will put a link to it in the description below. And also, regarding the photo in the thumbnail, I wanted to show you the game between Tal and Fischer from the 1960 Chess Olympiad, but I've already shown that game. And if you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's quite a beautiful game. It's really, in those days, it was called a modern day brilliancy. Will also be in the description below, so maybe check out those 2 videos before watching this one, or after this one. It will greatly improve your vast knowledge. Now, getting back to this game, Tal never wanted to play this game. It's a final round, and the day after this game was supposed to be played was Tal's birthday, and he wanted to be free. He wanted to have a day off, but the team captain said that Tal had to play, and Tal said that if he's forced to play, that he will lose on purpose. Now, of course, no one thought that would actually happen, because Tal was undefeated in this tournament. He was the world champion, and I mean, when you're at that level, you just don't lose on purpose because it's your birthday tomorrow. I mean, okay, maybe you want to go out celebrating a bit early, and that definitely does sound like something Tal would do. It just, you don't think that. So let's check out the game, and you guys tell me what actually happened here. So Jonathan has the white pieces, and he opens with pawn to d4. And of course, if you play d4 against Tal in those days, you will see this. Knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, and c5. Tal goes for the Benoni defense. We have pawn to d5, e captures on d5, c captures, and pawn to d6. We have pawn to e4, and now pawn to g6, preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop. And nowadays, f4 is the most popular way to play this. Also, knight to f3 is fine, but bishop to d3 is the 3rd most popular option, and it's still fine if you play it today in 2023. Bishop to g7, we have knight g to e2, and now both players just castle. So castles, we have a6, and now pawn to a4, of course stopping b5. We have queen to c7 by Tal, now preparing pawn to c4, and then you will want to bring this knight over to c5. Those are just some standard Benoni maneuvers. With h3, knight b to d7, and now pawn to f4. Tal plays rook to e8, puts more pressure on the e4 pawn, and knight to g3 adds another defender to the pawn. And now Tal goes for it. Pawn to c4, attacks the bishop, bishop to c2, and now knight to c5. Now, the knight is excellently placed here. At some point, the knight might come to b3, the knight might come to d3. We have queen to f3. You also need to defend that e4 pawn, so queen to f3. And now, there are a couple of games that reach this position in those days, and also maybe not a bad way to continue would be something like rook to b8 to prepare b5, and if white stops this with a5, you can still play rook to pawn to b5, and it's a very interesting position. For example, captures, now pawn to f5, and the game continues. But Tal decided to play knight f to d7, and it is now, as of move 15, that this position has never been reached again. So Jonathan goes for bishop to e3, and now Tal plays pawn to b5, and this is the first suboptimal move Tal plays in this game. Now b5 is the move you want to play. You just want to prepare it a little bit first. And since the queen moved away from the defense of the d3 square, knight to d3 does seem like an idea to explore. Point is that now after, let's say, captures and rook a to d1, you want to win the pawn. Tal can defend it, and now after, let's say, bishop f2 to add another attacker to the pawn, now you can go for a counter attack with pawn to b5. And pawn to b5 is very, very strong here now, because it's very hard for white to find the move. You're going to have to play something like rook captures on d3, then b captures on a4, and it's a complete mess of a position. The problem with trading queens here is that after captures and captures, black has this incredibly strong pawn to b4 move, and now after the knight moves in, you have to really be careful. It's an id1, a5 can be played. Now bishop to a6 is a huge threat, and after rook to e1, still bishop to a6 attacks the rook, let's say rook d2, and now rook a to c8, and this definitely looks like a position Tal would thrive in. I mean, you have the control of the c file, you have the fully operational bishop pair, it's easy for the knight to get into the game. I mean, this is definitely a position Tal would enjoy playing, and he would obliterate anyone here. But he rushed it with pawn to b5, and this is where I almost believe Tal when he said that he would lose on purpose. Not that he wanted to lose with b5, he just didn't put in that extra effort that he, well, almost always puts in. So a captures on b5, he plays rook to b8, and now queen to f2. Putting pressure on the knight here, and now e5 will be somewhat of a problem. A captures on b5, and now pawn to e5, trying to get a very strong center. In the least, the e6 will be an idea in the future. If you capture, then the knight will no longer be defended. So Tal does capture, d captures on e5. As for the moment, the knight is defended twice, but now comes pawn to f5, and this is something that I often say about Tal when I cover his games where he plays against very strong attackers, that sometimes Tal enjoys the attack so much that it's almost as if he wishes for the attack to succeed. He respects the attack even more than his own result in the game, one could say. So here, the only way for Tal to defend is to go back, rook to f8. But it's not a move very characteristic of Tal's style. But I will show it, because it's even with rook to f8, which is the absolute strongest move recommended by the engine, the defense is, you can't see this. For example, pawn to f6 by white, and now you have to capture. The problem with going back, let's say bishop to h8, is that d6 is coming, and now black is just completely busted. If queen captures on d6, look at this, knight to f5. Now you can't capture the knight because of queen g3 check. You can't capture the pawn because the queen hangs, and if you play queen captures on f6, then comes knight to d5, attacks the queen, and you're out of moves here. You have to give up the queen. If you play queen to e6, then just knight d to e7 check, and now the king is out of moves. So that's you're going to have to give up your queen either way. So that's why after this pawn to f6 move, you can't really afford yourself the luxury of going back. You're going to have to capture here. Bishop captures on f6, but now bishop captures on c5, and everything gets traded off. Queen captures on c5, queen captures, knight captures, now rook captures on f6, and white is just much better here. You are down a piece with black, and well, it's not very pleasant. You do have 2 pawns for the piece. It's just not very believable. And that is if black plays the absolute best defense, that is rook to f8. But here Tal played bishop to b7, and now comes rook a to d1. Now this is a slight misplay by Jonathan. The problem is here after this bishop to b7 move, you can just win on the spot with f captures on g6. But it's weird, because you know that you're not going to be capturing anything. Look at this, f captures on g6. Now queen to f7 is nothing, because you just put the king on h8. The move that both of them obviously missed is bishop captures on g6. And now after h captures, queen to f7 check, king to h8, and now queen captures on g6, and now you have all sorts of problems, like rook coming to f5 to h5, so you have to prevent this, let's say rook to f8, but now knight captures on b5, attacks the black queen, and you can feel that this is not going the way you planned. Queen to d8, knight to d6, now going for knight to f7 check, and now after bishop captures on d5, guarding f7, you will play knight g to f5, and there's just no surviving this for black. So really a hard position. But yeah, he missed it. He played rook a to d1 instead, and now Tal has a new lease on life. He plays bishop to a8, which is also a suboptimal move. You have to play pawn to e4, but this is a complete mess of a game. Tal played bishop to a8. Now the b5 pawn is defended, but now knight c to e4. We have knight to a4 by Tal, and now bishop captures on a4. Again, interestingly, f captures on g6 is winning, but it's like both of them are missing this. The point now is that after captures and queen to f7 check, king to h8, there's this incredible knight to h5, just threatening checkmate, and after you capture it, now knight to g5 with the idea of queen captures on h5 followed by queen captures on h7. It's like when Tal is playing, either he's attacking or he's getting brutalized with some sort of a crazy attack like this. And now, let's say pawn e4, you have to block the bishop here, doesn't really matter. Pawn to d6, and after the queen moves, now you play queen captures on h5, and you either get checkmated or you play h6, but then knight to f7 check, for example, will win the queen. This is only one of the winning lines, all of them are winning, and it's weird that both of them are missing f captures on g6. But what are you gonna do? Bishop captures on a4 was played, b captures on a4, and now f captures on g6. We have f captures on g6, now queen to f7 with check, king to h8, and now knight to c5. And this is a beautiful move. The knight cannot capture because the queen on c7 hangs, so now Tal, of course, he will find a way to complicate. He plays queen to a7. Now, if the knight moves, Tal can play queen captures on e3 with check, and that's a big problem for Jonathan, but it can all be solved with a simple king to h2. However, queen captures on d7 is played, he grabs the piece, and now Tal trades. Queen captures, we have knight captures on d7, and now rook captures on b2. Now Tal is down a piece, but he does have the passed c pawn and the passed a pawn. So knight to b6, going after those pawns, and Tal has to decide which one to give up. He could also play rook to b4, but then your rook is just very inactive, and you don't want to play that. Then d6 is coming, d7, it looks very passive. So instead, after knight to b6, rook to b3 was played by Tal, attacking the bishop here, but now just knight captures on c4, eliminates the pawn and defends the bishop here. We have rook to d8 now, attacking the passed d pawn and pawn to d6. It's nicely defended here. Rook to c3 goes after the knight, and now just rook to c1, defending the knight. We have rook captures on c1, rook captures on c1, and now bishop to d5. Knight to b6 now attacks the bishop, and the bishop to b3 defends the pawn and nicely controls the knight on b6. Knight to e4, and here pawn to h6, stopping knight to g5 because the knight really wants to come to g5 and to f7. We have pawn to d7 by Jonathan, and here Tal really is out of moves because if you start advancing the pawn, let's say pawn to a3, then rook to c8 can be played, and there's nothing you can play here. You can't capture because the queen comes into the game, and if you play rook to g8, then just the rook captures, bishop captures, and now d8 queen. And that's it. If pawn to a2, you can just play queen to a8, and the pawn will never promote. So Tal figures a different plan. Of course, you cannot defend with bishop to f6, the knight is covering that, so he plays bishop to f8. Now the rook will be defended with bishop to e7 once the white rook lands on c8. So rook to c8 by Jonathan, and now Tal just plays bishop to e7. But even though it seems like Tal has now defended and that his a pawn is winning, feel free to pause the video and win the game for Jonathan while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this, well, incredible idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is of course bishop to c5. This is what Jonathan played, and now there really isn't anything more for Tal to try here. If you capture, then just rook captures rook, and if bishop to h4, which was played in the game, Jonathan just played pawn to g3, and he was in this position on move 39 that world champion Mikhail Tal resigned to the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So Tal played a brilliant tournament. He did not lose a single game, but this game that he promised that he will lose if they force him to play it, he did lose. But as you've seen in the game, it's not for lack of trying. Jonathan really played a spectacular game. Tal had a few suboptimal moves, but then again, you have to really do well to exploit those. So here you resign because the bishop has no squares. Of course, you're going to lose the bishop, and then you don't really even care about the bishop. You just want to get rid of the bishop, so you can play rook captures on e8, and there is no counterplay here. There is no move that Tal can make here to even try and make something of this game. So it's really just a terrible position. So yeah, really nicely done by Jonathan Penrose. Like I said, the only loss Tal suffered in this tournament. Now I haven't shown you the Fischer game because I've already shown Fischer versus Tal. For those of you who haven't seen it, first link in the description below. And now regarding the photo in the thumbnail that you guys are interested in, here you can see a couple of gentlemen here. There you have all the way on the far left is Mikhail Tal's old mentor Alexander Koblenz. Then you have Tal here really laughing it out. Then Lombardi next to him, and then Fischer all the way to the right. I don't know who the woman in the photo is. If anyone knows, do share in the comments so we can all learn. But basically, Fischer said to Tal that he was studying palmistry lately. I guess that's the art of reading someone's future from their palm. And Fischer told Tal that he will lose his World Chess Championship title to a young American. To that, Tal turned over to Lombardi and he said, "Congratulations, Bill," as he was also a young American. So he said, "No way, Bob, you're not becoming world champion." And they were all having a good time, having a laugh. So it looks like they're having the best of times. So I'm very happy that this moment took place. It's probably not a photo from that exact moment, but in my mind, it always will be. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll probably cover all the other games Tal played in this tournament, and I should definitely cover the entire tournament and all of the cool games that were played because it is a wonderful tournament. So I will make a playlist and from time to time I will come back to this tournament and cover it, but until then, we'll just enjoy whatever else is happening in the chess world. So yeah, that's the game. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank David Kimura, golfsoftware.com, Paul Hinamund, Gary Shaw, and Ravishing Reptiles YouTube for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions such as this one and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very nice game that was played yesterday in the 6th Elite Chess titled Arena. It's a game between Grandmaster Andrew Tang and Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, World Chess Champion. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy the game as it's quite interesting, and although it's a bullet game 1 minute per player with no increment, the game is surprisingly high quality. No blunders were made in this game, and it features a very nice opening, the check Benoni, which I'm very fond of. So before we check out the actual game, we do have a nice photo challenge for this video. As this is a game from the 6th Elite Chess titled Arena, I thought we'd make the photo challenge a bit thematic. So here you go. Who is the gentleman in the photo? The t-shirt is a bit of a tell, but I don't think it will be too easy for you. So there you have it. Best of luck to everyone, and now let's check out the game. As you know, Carlsen won the first 4 Elite Chess titled arenas, and then he donated the money back every time. And then for the 5th Elite Chess titled arena, I believe the first prize was some $3,000. But I think he started playing the fifth Lichess titled arena, but he did not finish it. I think he had some connection issues, and then he just gave up on it. It was actually Andrew Tank here with the handle GM Penguin IM1 who won this event. So for this sixth Lichess titled arena, the first prize is $500. So, knowing that, let's check out the game. Andrew has the white pieces, and he opens with d4. We're not going to analyze it per se, since it's a bullet game, but we are going to show the game and check out some of the ideas. Knight to f6, c4, c5. Carlsen goes for the Benoni defense. We have d5. And now, not going for e6, which is the standard modern variation of the Benoni, but rather e5, the Czech variation of the Benoni, or the Czech Benoni. Here, knight to c3, we have d6, and now e4. Carlsen goes g6, prepares to fianchetto his dark square bishop, g3, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, and castles. Knight to g2, e2. Andrew has a nice grip on the f4 square. He wants to castle, push f4. So knight b to d7 by Carlsen. We have castles, and here a6. And now a standard move when you're playing against the Benoni. Andrew pushes a4, doesn't allow Carlsen to push b5. And here it's never an easy task to find a move for black when playing the Benoni, especially in a bullet game. But Carlsen goes for the best idea, knight to h5. He prepares f5, f4 by Andrew, and now e captures on f4. We have for some reason the sound just came back, so sorry about that. After e captures on f4, you could play knight captures on f4, but Andrew decides to go for g captures on f4. It creates a very nice pawn center, and also moves like e5 or f5 will be available in the future. But it allows Carlsen to go for f5 himself. So e captures on f5, rook captures on f5, and now knight to e4 is an idea here to go for the g4 square. Andrew goes for bishop to e3. Carlsen goes knight d to f6. We have knight to g3, offering a trade of knights here, so Carlsen accepts this. Knight captures on g3, h captures on g3, and now Carlsen does have to do something about this rook, as g4 is a threat. If you don't go for rook to h5 or h5, then g4 will trap the rook on f5. So instead of h5, Carlsen goes for rook to h5, which is the best idea. Bishop to f3, attacking the rook on h5, and now comes rook to h3. King to g2, attacking the rook, but the rook is guarded, basically only making room for this rook to come to h1. h5, and here the best idea for white here is bishop to f2 to keep an eye on the g3 pawn, or rook to h1 to immediately go for the rook exchange. Andrew goes queen to d2, and now Carlsen takes advantage of this very nicely. He pushes h4. G captures on h4, and now knight to h5, and this is the idea. Now you don't have time to capture on h5, because if you capture here, then queen captures on h4, and there is no defense. Either queen to g3 checkmate is coming, or rook to h2 with check that will win the queen on d2, and of course the game. So after knight to h5, we have rook to h1, but now rook to h1 is much too late. Carlsen plays queen captures on h4, and now if you capture the rook here, then you get bishop captures with check. King moves, and now queen g3 check, bishop here, and now simply bishop captures queen captures on e3 with check. White will be up a piece in a completely winning game. So after queen captures on h4, knight to e4 was played by Andrew, not allowing queen g3, as the knight is now guarding the g3 square. And here, if you play something like bishop to f5 to maybe remove the defender of the g3 square, then white will be able to defend with queen to f2. And now after knight captures, bishop captures, rook captures, and queen captures, white will be able to go into an endgame. For example, after bishop to d3, of course it will still be much better for black, but he will still have to work for his meal, and as it is a bullet game, you don't want to allow white any chances like these. So after knight to e4, bishop to g4 was played, and now the same idea doesn't apply, but there's really nothing better here. For example, if you capture, let's say you go for queen to f2, this was played in the game. Here Carlsen played queen captures on f2, but even bishop captures on f3 was sufficient with check, because now after queen captures, you can go rook captures, and after rook captures simply capture the bishop on e3, and after knight captures on d6. White would still of course try something, it's a bullet game, but being down a piece, a whole bishop here, no chances for white here. So after queen to f2, Carlsen simply chose the simplest way, but also the strongest idea. Queen captures on f2. Here, knight captures on f2 was played, and now comes rook to g3 check. This is probably a move that was missed. King to f1, and now rook captures on f3. Knight can't capture on g4 because it's pinned, so rook to e1. And now again the strongest maneuver, knight g3 check, checking the king and forking the rook on h1. King g2, knight captures, we have knight captures on g4, and now comes rook to g3, and after king captures, rook captures, but it was already in this, I believe it was in this position on move 28 that Andrew Tang resigned in the game, as after captures, we have a position where black is up a whole rook. Still, it's a rook on a8, but it's a whole rook. Once you develop it, there's no point in continuing this game, and I don't believe he was even better on time at this position. So yeah, after rook to g3 check, he resigned the game, and a very nice victory for Magnus Carlsen. I will put a link to Andrew Tang's YouTube channel so you can check out this game. He was streaming the entire event, the entire 2 hours of the 6th Lichess titled arena. So you can check it out, with some of his commentary and some of the other games he played if you desire. So this game starts at the 22 minutes and 30 seconds mark, I believe, but I will also put a link to it and the minute mark in the description below, so you can just click on it if you're interested. And for some final standings, here are the final standings of the 6th Lichess titled arena. As you can see, GM Dem Salty That Sport, which is Magnus Carlsen's third handle on Lichess, so for as far as we know. Then in second place, GM Rebecca Harris, which I believe is Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, but not sure. And then Grandmaster Night King 96. Obviously a Game of Thrones fan. Then we have EM Operwezen, Vincent Rotaios of Netherlands, Baba Ramdev, that's Achka Chandra, and in 6th place Andrew Tang, who almost managed to climb to the first 3 places, but he didn't. But it doesn't matter, as he won the 5th Lichess titled arena with the prize money, the highest ever that Carlsen kept donating, which was, I believe, $3,000. But yeah, here the first place was $500. Magnus Carlsen donated it back. So for the 7th Lichess titled arena, I'm pretty sure we can expect at least $1,000 first place. So yeah, and as I've heard, GM Dem Salty That Sport, Carlsen's third handle, already has over 1,000 followers on Lichess. So, I will put a link to the tournament in the description as well, if you want to browse through some of the games, or maybe follow some of these strong players. And also, I prepared this. This is as you can see, Penguin, Iron 1, and Damn Salty That Sport played 4 games in this 6th Lichess title arena. Magnus Carlsen won all 4 of them. And here you have some statistics from this game that they've played. So Penguin made 7 inaccuracies, 7 mistakes, 0 blunders, and Carlsen made 6 inaccuracies, 1 mistake, and 0 blunders. So not bad by both of them, for a bullet game. And there you have learn from your mistakes. If you see this button, which is a feature on Lichess, after you play a game, you can check out any of your moves, and Stockfish9 will be very happy to point you in the right direction. So there you have it, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check all my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and like I said, all of the useful links will be in the description below, so feel free to check them out. And I will hide the person from the photo challenge somewhere in the description if no one figures it out, so look for it there. So thank you all, and I'll see you soon tomorrow with the last 2 games of the Bobby Fischer Series 1970 tournament in Palma de Mallorca. So thank you all, I'll see you soon. Hello everyone! I hope you're all having a wonderful Saturday because we're back at the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament. It's round 18 and we have German Grandmaster Wolfgang Ullmann facing Bobby Fischer with the black pieces. So what to say a bit about this game before we check it out and talk a little bit about the players. We do have a nice photo challenge, so in preparations of this entire series and the candidates matches that will follow. The Palma de Mallorca Interzonal, here you have it, the one and only. Now you have to say who it is. That's how the photo challenge works. Best of luck to everyone. Now let's check it out. Wolfgang Ullmann, like we've already said, German Grandmaster, but not only a German Grandmaster, he also had a professional career as an accountant. So, I mean, what a party animal. And he won a lot of first places. 1970 and the events leading up to 1970 were probably one of his best years. He won a lot of first places in international tournaments. Here he qualified for the interzonal tournament, as you'll see later, but you might already remember, as we did show the final standings in the first couple of videos. He will qualify for the candidates matches after the Palma de Mallorca Interzonal, and this will be one of his best achievements ever. But one of his most interesting aspects is that he is an acknowledged, how would I say it? He is considered to be one of the greatest masters of the French defense in the world. And he has written many books on it, on the French defense, and he defeated many strong grandmasters. One of his most notable games is his victory over David Bronstein in 1977 in Tallinn in the French defense. But also, as he is now playing against Bobby Fischer, 10 years ago in 1960 in Buenos Aires, he defeated Bobby Fischer with none other than the French defense. And exclusively, if someone played e4 against him, he will play the French defense. And that's one of the games I will probably cover after we finish the Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament, just for fun. So that being said, there is already a d4 on the board, but it's quite alright, as d4 is the first move that was played in this game. So Ullmann goes for d4. He does have the white pieces here, but as Fischer would most likely go for e4, perhaps he would maybe enjoy the black pieces, so he could go for the French defense against Fischer a bit more. But okay, knight to f6, c4, we have c5, Fischer goes for the Benoni, d5, now we have e6, the modern variation, knight c3, we have captures, and d6. So everything standard here, e4, g6 immediately, and now bishop to f4, and here we have a6. Always a useful move, not allowing any knight b5 business, preparing b5, and you can go bishop to g7 immediately. There is no problems here that this will be any sort of a threat, because here not queen to a5 check, but rather knight captures on e4, and this will be fine. After you attack the defender of the d6 pawn, you will simply attack the knight, and black is much better here. But okay, a6 by Fischer, provoking a4, as Ullmann does want Fischer to push b5. We have a4, bishop to g7, and the knight to f3. Castles, bishop to e2, now comes the bishop to g4, as the light square bishop is probably the most useless piece when you're playing the Benoni. Fischer wouldn't mind exchanging it. We have castles, rook to e8, and now comes h3. A move that could, it could be definitely classified as a mistake. So if you're black here, if you're playing Fischer, do you capture or do you move the bishop back? What do you do in this position? Neither of those options, rather you play knight captures on e4. And the reason this is possible, because h3, with the idea of this variation where the bishop is placed on f4, notice that the bishop on f4 is undefended. So what's the idea here? If you capture the bishop, then you get bishop captures on c3. Pawn captures and knight captures here. The bishop is attacked twice, the queen is under attack. You have to move the queen, and now comes knight captures on e2 with check. The rook is guarding the knight. King moves, and now you can simply either capture here and then continue developing, and black will have an excellent position here and will be up material. Another thing, after knight captures on e4, h captures on g4 was not played, as Ullmann sees that this will not simply won't do. So knight captures on e4, and here comes rook captures on e4. So yet again, you can't capture the bishop because this bishop on f4 is now undefended. Bishop to g5 with an attack on the queen, and now queen to e8. So you have to see all the way to here before you actually decide to capture that pawn on e4 with the knight, because now there's a double attack on the e2 bishop, and again, white shouldn't really capture here. So bishop to d3, attacking the rook, and now comes a bishop captures on f3. Again, one of the moves you had to see if you ever decided to capture that there. We have queen captures on f3. You don't want to capture the rook and give up 2 bishops for a rook. So queen captures, and now comes rook to b4. So Fischer has an outstanding position. He is up a pawn, and everything is well here. We have rook 8 to e1, bishop to e5, and now comes queen to d1, preparing to push f4 as the bishop on e5 is pinned. But it's not really a problem. Even if you capture here on b2 and allow this f4 move, you always have bishop to d4 check, and after king moves, you can then move the queen, but you would simply allow white too much activity, even though white would not regain material balance. So after queen to d1, Fischer simply plays queen captures on a4, he offers a trade of queens, and he's satisfied with the way things are. Queen captures, rook captures, and now comes f4. Bishop to d4 check, king moves, and now knight to d7, simply preparing to develop pieces. Rook to e7, and now if you check out the position, you can see that Fischer has 7 pawns, Ullmann has 5 pawns, so Fischer is up 2 pawns. But Ullmann has a bishop pair and a very active rook on e7. So is this compensation enough? We'll just have to check it out. Fischer goes knight to f6. He offers the b7 pawn. And okay, rook captures on b7, reducing the material difference to only 1 pawn. And now not going for knight captures on d5 to allow f5. And if the f file opens, then white will have sufficient compensation, for the material. But after rook to b7, knight to h5 by Fischer. He doesn't go for this capture, and now he's threatening knight to g3 check with the idea of capturing the exchange here. King to h2, and now comes bishop to e3, attacking the f4 pawn. And here the f4 pawn is attacked 3 times, by the bishop, by the knight, and by the rook. So the most obvious idea, g3, does not work here, because now you get rook d4. You attack the bishop here, and if the bishop moves, then rook to d2 will be very unpleasant. So after rook to d1 defending it, now you get bishop to f2, attacking the g3 pawn that was so conveniently pushed to protect f4, g4, and now knight captures on f4. Again, black is doing excellent here. So after bishop to e3, we have bishop to e2, attacking the h5 knight. Bishop captures on f4, bishop captures on f4, and now rook captures on f4, again not allowing bishop captures knight, because the rook on f1 would be undefended. So rook to b6, attacking the d6 pawn. We have rook captures, bishop captures, and now rook to d8. Fischer again offers the a6 pawn, because he doesn't want to allow Ullmann to capture the d6 pawn and create a very strong passer here. Bishop captures on a6, and now comes king to g7. Bishop to b5, Ullmann wants to play bishop to c6 to protect the d5 pawn, so when Fischer attacks it via knight f4 or knight f6, the pawn will be defended, and then the rook can move. So king to f6, bishop to c6, king to e5, Fischer improves the position of his king. We have rook to b7, now attacking the f7 pawn, and Fischer goes rook to f8, defending it. We have rook to e7, this comes with check. Fischer plays king to d4. We have rook to d7, attacking the d6 pawn. And here it seems like Fischer doesn't really have a good move here. If he goes back to defend the pawn, then again rook to e7 check, and Fischer would have to go back. But after rook to d7, attacking the pawn, there is one move Ullmann missed, and Fischer played it. So feel free to pause the video here and find the crushing move that instantly wins Fischer the game. So there you have it. I will give it a couple of seconds for if you want to decide whether to do it or not, as usual. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you have successfully continued Fischer's legendary winning streak. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, knight to f6 was the move played, and it was in this position that Wolfgang Ullmann, German grandmaster and an accountant, resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, it's pretty obvious once you see it. If you don't see it, it's not very obvious, but once you see it, it's very obvious. After rook captures on d6, king to e5 traps the rook. Knight is guarding d7, rook is guarding d8, the rook has nowhere to go, the bishop is blocking the rook. So here you would simply have to give up the exchange, and with 4 pawns each, a rook will be better than a bishop here. And even if you don't capture, after knight to f6, if you play something like, well, rook to b7, maybe blocking rook b8, not so black can't attack the pawn. Again, black can pretty much choose what to do here. Knight captures on d5, the most obvious idea. Fischer will now be up 2 pawns, and now you can't play an endgame being down 2 pawns against Fischer. So yeah, that's the game. Round number 18 of the Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament of 1970. Wolfgang Ullmann versus Bobby Fischer. I do hope you enjoyed it, and that you're enjoying the coverage of the Bobby Fischer series so far. I would like to thank Le Cui Nyan, Robin Morit, and Shah Huda for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with round 19 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon. Hello everyone, and welcome back to 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament. It's round 10. Bobby Fischer with the black pieces faces the Hungarian Botvinnik, Lajos Portis, as they called him, due to his exclusive positional style. Now, after 5 consecutive wins, Bobby Fischer got 2 draws, and then finally in round 9 he suffers his first loss at the hands of the Danish Grandmaster Bent Larsen. This is round 10. Like we said, he faces Lajos Portis, who, aside from being a strong Grandmaster, which is pretty much self-explanatory as he's playing in the Interzonal Tournament, actually qualified for the Interzonal Tournament 12 consecutive times. So that's really insane, and he qualified for the candidates tournament 8 times. So let's check out this game. Portis has the white pieces, and let's see how Fischer will fare against the Hungarian Botvinnik. We have d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, the anti-Nimzo, and c5, transposing into the Benoni. We have d5, pawn captures on d5, c captures on d5, and g6. Knight to c3, bishop to g7, this is all pretty standard. Bishop to f4, we have d6, and queen to a4 check. You can't like immediately take advantage of the d6 pawn with something like knight to b5. There's really not a good way to defend this pawn, but queen to a5 check will force the knight to go back to c3, as it's attacked on b5, and after knight e4 it's actually black who will get the upper hand. So after d6 we have queen to a4 check, Fischer blocks, bishop d7, and here we have queen to b3, queen to c7, and now e4. So still pretty much all standard stuff. We have castles by Fischer, and now bishop to e2. Fischer goes a6, preparing b5, and here interestingly, whenever you face the Benoni and someone plays a6, more often than not you will play a4. But here a4 is not the best move. Portis goes for the best move, which is e5. As Fischer did allow it, Portis plays it. D captures on e5, bishop captures on e5, attacking the queen. You do have to move the queen. Queen to c8 is played, and here Portis castles. You could think, okay, maybe I want to go a4 here, prevent Fischer from playing b5, but there's no reason to do it just yet. So instead Portis castles, and now Fischer goes bishop to g4. If Fischer did try to take this opportunity that Portis did not play a4 to push b5, then Portis can simply counter it with a4, and it's actually Portis who is much more developed here. For example, after captures, knight to b6, already a threat. So bishop captures, rook captures, and now after something like knight bd7, bishop to f4, Fischer would have 2 isolated pawns on the queen side. After something like rook f to a1, it would be very hard to defend these pawns. So after castles, we have bishop to g4 by Fischer, h3, we have captures, and now knight b to d7. Fischer gave up the bishop pair, but he will soon win one of the bishops. Bishop to d6, attacking the rook, rook e8, and now a4. Only now does Portis go for this a4 resource. Knight to e5, and here you could play something like bishop to e2 to avoid this trade. If you play, well, there's really no good place to move it. You're not going to move it to d1, meaning moving it to d4 is pretty pointless. So Fischer definitely wants to grab this bishop. And even if you play something like totally weird, then even c4, knight to d3 would be a possibility. But okay, bishop captures on e5, rather giving up the dark square bishop, rook captures on e5, and now This was the critical moment of the game at the time this game was played, but today not so much, because the engines don't really agree with the evaluation of grandmasters in those days. Here Portish played Rook 8 d1, and this is kind of the critical moment where they said that he should have played Rook f to d1, that he should have kept this rook on the a file to keep controlling the queen side and to develop this rook. And then they said that after something like Rook b8, preparing b5, you prevent b5 by playing a5, and that now, while this rook is very nice on d1, very active, that this rook will be very useful on the queen side to keep controlling the queen side. But okay, Rook 8 to d1 was played here by Portish. We have Rook to b8, and now d6. Opening up those lines, maybe preparing knight d5. The bishop is now eyeing the b7 pawn. Fischer now goes b5, a captures on b5, pawn captures on b5, and rook f to e1. Fischer exchanges, rook captures, and now comes bishop to f8. A lot of moves were possible here as the b5 pawn is attacked. You could push b4, you could push c4. A lot of interesting ideas, but Fischer plays the best idea, bishop to f8. We have knight captures on b5 as the pawn is attacked twice, and now of course you cannot capture here with the idea, okay, the knight is pinned. No, it's not. The knight can freely capture, and after you capture the queen, knight will capture your queen. After you capture here, white will have a bishop for a pawn with an easily winning position. So after knight to b5, Fischer first plays queen to d7. Now with a double attack against the b5 knight, you have to defend the knight, as now the knight really is pinned. So bishop to e2, and now comes bishop captures on d6. Now the knight is still pinned, knight cannot capture here. We have bishop to c4, and now Fischer moves back, bishop to f8. We have rook to d1 attacking Fischer's queen, queen to e7, and now comes queen to d3. And it was in this position that they agreed to a draw. So after two draws and one defeat to Bent Larsen, Fischer faces yet another draw against the Hungarian Botvinnik Lajos Portish. And okay, it's the material is completely equal. It's a light square bishop against a dark square bishop, so perhaps there could be something if the position was a bit different, but here they both agree that it's completely drawn. After black plays something like rook b7, adding further defense to the f7 pawn, there's really no breaking through here. The queen and bishop are protecting this pawn that's on a dark square. You can't really use your light square bishop for anything here. All of Fischer's pieces are on dark squares. There's really no way to break through here. So they agreed to a draw here, and okay, a very nice game. But even with 3 draws and the loss, Fischer is still in the lead in this tournament. So all is well for Bobby. And like I said, you don't have to win the interzonal to qualify for the candidates. You just have to make it to the top 6 spots. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna cover round 11 very shortly, and it's interesting. Lajos Portish is still alive and well. To my knowledge, he's now 81 years old, and while he still plays, occasionally for fun, he mostly enjoys singing operas as a hobby. And in 2004, he was awarded the Sportsman of the Nation Award, which is Hungary's highest national sports achievement award. So, always nice when a chess player achieves such an honor. So yeah, I would like to thank Agad Mator's dog, Gil Troica, Mark Budvig, Philip Wemschulte, and Mitchell Weintraub for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with round 11 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal Tournament, and perhaps with another round of the Biel Chess Festival. See you soon.